So, members, the committee is resumed, and when we suspended last night, we were considering part 1 of the Taxation Budget Measures Bill number 2. And just to remind members, in the past, one approach has been for members to work through provisions or policies in sequence, so this tends to produce a more useful and focused debate. If members are wanting to discuss particular provisions, it would be useful to cite the clause number. That will assist other members who want to speak about the same provision. And part 1 contains the investment boost policy, changes to working for family, including Best Start, and we have KiwiSavers in part 1? Yes. KiwiSavers in part 2. So I did speak to the chair who was in here last night, who feels that we're largely working through the investment boost, and I know that the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell set out a bit of a context into how we should work. He also indicated that we'd had quite a number of questions on it, so what I really want to do this morning for the very first little part is just focus on anything that might tidy up that investment boost section that's new and wasn't asked last night. That isn't a speech but is a question, and then I suggest we start then moving on to the working for families following that. So this is no way trying to shut anything down, just keep the process going that we were up to. Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
Madam Chair, thank you for those directions. I think it's a really important direction. I want to focus specifically on its Clause 5, and the particular part of Clause 5 is the introduction of DI4, the meaning of a new investment asset. And in particular, what I am deeply concerned about is the fiscal risks associated with this particular policy. Now, this is not something we discussed yesterday. The reason we didn't discuss it yesterday is because it takes time to get to grips with new legislation and understand the import of what is going on. The interesting thing about this partial expensing is that it offers a substantial tax benefit for new assets in New Zealand. Yeah. It means that people can decide they can get an immediate tax benefit from a new asset. And amongst the new assets that could be considered there are things like commercial buildings. And in particular, shush and let the adults talk. Now, and I want to, and here is the problem.
That's what we get with interjections. That's what we get with interjections. So let's come back to D.
So we are talking about the fiscal risk. We did not talk about the fiscal risk at all yesterday, and it is substantial. It is a $1.5 billion a year allocated for the tax break that comes through the partial expensing. But that particular tax break could be eaten up very, very quickly by, just one or two mines, by a few commercial buildings, by, as Newsroom has pointed out overnight, if every single small business invests $10,000, there goes the tax break just like that. So I looked in the statement of fiscal risks in the budget economic and fiscal update, and I couldn't find a specific fiscal risk associated with this particular policy. What I want to know from the Minister is to what extent he and the Minister of Finance thought about whether or not this policy could just blow out, that there is a really substantial fiscal risk associated with it. We actually need to know, because the Minister has promised us the Minister is going to balance the books by about 2028. But if this policy blows out, we've got a real problem. So this break can apply, this tax break, can apply to a whole new commercial building. We know what they cost to build. It can apply to an oil rig. Just get a few oil rigs in here and suddenly, New Zealand, suddenly, it's gone, a convention centre. So I really want the Minister now to talk about something we haven't talked about at all, and that is the extent to which he and the Minister of Finance considered the fiscal risks associated with this. It is serious, and I would like to know.
Honourable Simon Watts.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And look, a very good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the growth budget, and what a great budget it is. I don't mind doing a basic lesson in what is depreciation for the member, because in effect what we are doing is increasing the rate in which people can claim a tax deduction, increasing it in the first year, and the balance will be claimed for the rest of the asset life. This is a timing difference. We are bringing forward that ability to claim that tax deduction. We're not creating some new world or new paradigm of other aspect. We are simply moving that benefit forward so that New Zealand businesses can achieve a tax deduction from yesterday and get the benefit of that in terms of less tax this year. That is a significant investment and opportunity for them as a business, but it in no way has any impact in what would be a normal rate of a depreciation on any economic asset over the life of that asset. So the whole premise of the question is uninformed and without basis, but our policy is very much focused on delivering that economic growth. And heck, I mean, I guess some people in the House are concerned about too much economic growth, but, you know, on this side of the House, we think a little bit differently. We sort of think economic growth is a good thing. It sort of helps us with a range of factors, including higher paid jobs, better standard of living, more tax revenue flows.
That's true, but that's not what the member asked the Minister.
The member asked about the risks in regards to the policy, and I have clarified that it is a depreciation policy which is well articulated in accounting standards.
Honourable Dr Deborah Russell.
It turns out I don't need a lesson in how depreciation works. And I am well aware that this is a timing difference only, so that the actual fiscal cost comes from the time value of money. However, I remind the Minister that yesterday, when we were talking about the rate sitting in here, we said, well, why was it set at 20%? Why wasn't it 25%? Why wasn't it 50%? Why wasn't it 10%? And so on. Why were we doing this partial expensing at 20%? The response the Minister gave, now I don't have the exact words, but the response the Minister gave was that that value was particularly set at 20%, a 20% partial expensing, because it was to do with containing the fiscal expense that was associated with this policy. In other words, he said we couldn't set it higher because we needed to set it at a level that contained the fiscal expense. Now, that suggests that there is a fiscal risk associated with this policy, that there has been some analysis of how much it was going to cost. We know it is going to cost, according to the Minister's own figures. The Treasury officials and the IRD officials have projected that it's going to cost $1.5 billion a year. But in the midst of all that, the implication there is that this cost could well blow out. That's the analysis that has come to us from other tax experts overnight. That's the analysis that's come and says, and it's come from a number of places. I'm going to refer to Newsroom and to interest.co.nz. People who have identified that this is a fiscal risk. Why is this fiscal risk not listed in the statement of specific fiscal risks in the Budget, Economic and Fiscal Update? Now, I've had a look of the specific fiscal risks. It is simply not there. Yet it seems to me that this is a fiscal risk. Even if it can't be quantified, it should be listed there as a risk. Why is it not listed there?
Madam Chair. Celia Wade-Brown.
Chair, Morena to the Minister. I've got a number of questions, particularly, and I'd like to start with D14, new investment assets. And I would ask the Minister whether we're talking about planting here, listed horticultural plants. I can imagine some that we might have some different lists of there. But what I want to ask is whether it would be appropriate to add native plants intended for regeneration. There are some quite bulk planting ideas, either for carbon sequestration or, if we get there, and I think the parties are relatively united in this, eventually biodiversity credits. I think it would be a shame if it didn't also apply to those. On the broader issues of the effect of this bill, I heard yesterday evening the Minister saying that he didn't intend to create any distortion across different businesses. However, surely this 20% expensing allowance means that you are helping capital-intensive businesses rather than the creative industry. And what we're talking about there, arts, fashion, publishing, film, software, gaming. I have members of my caucus that are experts in some of those areas. Those are... And that is an opportunity for high-paid jobs, good jobs, fulfilling jobs that actually are very light on the environment. And you know, here we are in the smart green capital. We've got fantastic industry here, and I don't think they're getting the opportunity. This is about one kind of industry, not the other. So addressing that issue of distortion of the markets, what kind of businesses are likely to be invested in because of this is one issue. And the last question I have for the Minister, I didn't even realise it was a change to the example. In the example used in clause 4, little 5, what on earth was the change to put in a yacht as a great example of business deduction? I mean, who, when they're trying to struggle to feed their kids, when they're struggling to pay for early childhood care, is really pleased to see a yacht for business purposes? Now, there are some dolphin watching yachts. There are some yachts that go around the Wellington Harbour, but I would argue that the majority of the yachts are really not our prime investment, economic growth. This looks really dodgy. I'd like to know the Minister's opinion on yachts for business deduction.
Madam Chair.
Just before I call the Honourable Simon Watts, I have to tell the people on my right that when you all talk at once, no one can hear a word any of you are saying. So please just be a bit more toned down in your interjections. As I keep saying, interjections are fine, but that was a barrage. Honourable Simon Watts.
Well, thank you very much, members, for those comments, particularly from the left. In regards to the specific risks that were noted by the prior member, I'd reference disclosures on page 74 of the BFU, which outline the general policy changes and the implications in regards to the question around risks. There was also a question in regards to horticultural plants, the view in that context that those are generally available and are defined as part of the Income Tax Act in the context of what plants are there. The comments in regards to yachts, well, look, the reality is, and to all those New Zealand tourism businesses out there that do great things for our country and do so on our oceans and our harbours and assets. Yeah, it's an example of a mixed-use asset, and the rule covers that context as well. So I won't cover anything more of that. In regards to Clause 5, subsections DI, and also in regards to the questions by members on new investment assets, I think we've had a number of those questions, including last night as well, but I'll go through it again just for the benefit of doubt. So the investment boost is available for most assets that are eligible for depreciation or depreciation-like deductions. These assets include most depreciable property, including improvements to depreciable property, improvements to farm and forestry land and agricultural businesses, and also, as noted, expenditure on the planting of horticultural products. Investment boost would also be available for assets acquired in petroleum development expenditure and mining development expenditure, as this government has outlined. Investment boost would not be available for assets that are residential property or fixed life intangible property, including permits and rights, and for assets that are used for deriving income and for some other purpose, so in effect a mixed-use asset such as the yacht example that I have noted, investment boost would only be claimable to the extent that the asset is being used for the purpose of deriving income. So I hope that sufficiently covers the questions in regards to new investment asset, the definition and the clauses as asked of public.
Is someone wanting to take a call over this side, because we have not finished part one? So if it's a call, Thank you. I'm going to call Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell, because I think we really are getting towards the end of investment boost, and I do want to move on to working for families.
Thank you.
I'm going to allow another call.
Thank you.
And then I think we will move on.
I do have one more very specific call, question. But before I go to that, I do want to carry on with this issue of fiscal risk. It is important. The Minister directed me to page 74, I think, of the Budget Economic and Fiscal Update. Could I direct the Minister to page 89 of the Budget Economic and Fiscal Update, where it says, under the heading, forecast dependent on a status quo that is uncertain, and then under revenue, it has investment boost revenue, and it says, for the Minister's benefit, the fiscal and economic impacts of investment boost are significant and have been based on some assumptions and judgments which have a degree of uncertainty. The modelled impacts use aggregate macroeconomic data as an input, together with assumptions on coverage within the tax base and forecasts of growth and investment. Variations in any of these factors can materially affect the fiscal and economic impacts of the policy. So that's a pretty significant fiscal risk sitting right there, and it says it's an unquantifiable fiscal risk. So I really am asking the Minister to address this issue. Is there a downside risk that not as much will be invested in this policy as the Minister and his colleagues had hoped? What impact will that have on the projected growth? On the other hand, what is the upside risk of that much more will be spent on this policy than the Minister had thought was going to be the case? What impact is that going to have on the fiscal, on the budget deficit over time? Does it mean that the Minister of Finance's projections of when we will be back into surplus using either her spurious little Obergall X or the traditional Obergall measure, does it put those projections at risk? So sitting here, page 89 in the Budget and Economic Fiscal Update, an acknowledgement that there is a fiscal risk associated with this policy. I want to know more about the possible upsides and downsides, and to what extent this could actually impact on the growth projections or impact on when this country gets back to surplus.
Madam Chair. Honourable Simon Watts.
Yeah, thanks very much, Madam Chair. Acknowledging that this question isn't about a specific clause in part one, and it is also a repeat of a question already asked, I will simply state the obvious, which is that all economic models have assumptions and judgments built into them, and that is standard practice in the calculation of economic growth and deriving the implications and decisions that some 600,000 businesses may make from yesterday in regards to their investment decision making. That is standard practice for any government, and the assumptions and judgments made as part of that are considered appropriate by this government.
I now am asking for questions on working for families, including Best Start. So we are moving on from investment boost and we are going into working for families, including Best Start. Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
Chair, thank you for your very clear directions, and I do genuinely appreciate them. It's much easier to work this process through in an orderly manner with those directions. We do have some serious questions about the Working for Families policy. Now, the interesting thing is that it's only really a couple of clauses in the bill, but they have a really significant impact. I want to open with a policy discussion. This is where we get to discuss the policy around the Working for Families and the changes here. What we know from the regulatory impact statement, and it's on page 3, I think, of the regulatory impact statement, is that, and looking at the costs and benefits of this policy, is that we know that around, here it is, page 3, around 61,000 families would receive a reduction of income in these changes to the Working for Families. changes. So I want to know from the Minister why he thought it was acceptable for 61,000 families to end up with less income rather than more, and why, to what extent that then these families are ending up worse off in order to pay for other expenses within the budget. And thank you.
Ingrid Leary.
Just a very quick question from me to the Minister regarding where the threshold has changed around the Working for Families tax credit. We've heard commentary to say that in some ways this just lifts the threshold and therefore the squeezed area has moved upward. In terms of incentivising and encouraging families, when we think about economic growth and about productivity, it is arguably a disincentive for people to be able to increase their income when they are in that slightly higher bracket, because as soon as they do, they would be in the 64,000 families that would lose the credit. So I'm wanting to understand what consideration was given, again as a policy question, to how to make sure that there are adequate incentives in the system to not have people then drop out of, for example, secondary employment or want to move up into a higher, more specialised field in their current employment because they then risk losing this abatement. It really just is about the thresholds changing, but Madam Chair, there has been commentary about this on Radio New Zealand this morning, which I think is quite appropriate, and I'd like to know what thought the Minister and his officials had given to that.
Honourable Simon Watts.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, members, for the question, and I'll take a little bit of time just to outline some of the key points in regards to this. First and foremost, it is really, really important to acknowledge that no families will see an actual reduction in income as a result of the Best Start change, as only children that are born on or after the 1st of April 2026, next April, are going to be subject to that. So that is a really important aspect in terms of family impact. Treasury estimate 61,000 families will receive less than they would under current settings by an average of $43 a fortnight in 2026-2027. And of these families, 89% will have taxable income over $100,000. And this includes 53,000 families not eligible for Best Start following implementation, and 9,000 families earning between $79,000 and $97,276 who would receive an abated amount of Best Start in the first year of the child's life. Of those 9,000 families who will receive an abated Best Start in the first year, they have incomes of between $79,000 and $97,000, as I've noted. The $79,000 is the Best Start abatement threshold, and the $97,000 is the point in which entitlements are cut off, just to clarify those 2 points. Lastly, it's important to note that of the 53,000 families who became ineligible for Best Start, those families are already earning over the Best Start cut-off point, which is $97,000. These are targeted interventions. No families will see an actual reduction as a result of the Best Start change, as they only apply to children born on or after 1st of April 2026.
Honourable Dr Deborah Russell.
To engage with this issue of families earning, I think the Minister said over $97,000. The trouble is, I think that's two workers within the family on minimum wage. And so these are some pretty low-income families who are working quite hard, or it's maybe someone who's on a little bit more than that. So they're actually quite low-income families. And in effect, what we're saying is that these families are rich enough not to need any assistance from the state. Now, in terms of, I think it was 53,000 families on Best Start. That's here's the curious thing, if a family is working minimum wage jobs, if they're working just slightly above minimum wage, I don't know, maybe they're a library assistant, so they're not even getting pay equity these days. They might be getting the living wage. It's still a comparatively low wage. And then when a baby arrives in that family, no matter what, there are extra expenses. Is the Minister saying to us that families who are earning 2 minimum wage incomes are in fact rich families and rich enough not to need assistance from the state? That seems to be the implication of what he's saying in that particular call.
Honourable Simon Watts.
Madam Chair, no, we are not saying that. What we are saying that we are targeting this policy in a way in which ensures that those on low and median incomes are most beneficial of the context of the changes that we made. We make no apology for targeting the benefits of our policy to those who need it most. And we can argue all day long in the context of where that threshold is, but this government has set the abatement threshold at $97,276, and we believe that that's an appropriate level to ensure that that policy is targeted to those who need it most.
Dr. Lawrence Yunnan.
Madam Chair, I have 2 questions for the Minister around Clause 7 of the bill around the family credit abatement. Now, I hear what the Minister is saying, and I also think that, adjusting the threshold from 42,700 to 44,900 is a good step. However, I wondered, looking at the risks, it seems like that was the only threshold that was considered. There was no other threshold that was considered. So what we are seeing here is not so much in terms of we are looking at something that's going to benefit lots of lower income earners as opposed to we're just basically catching up with CPI is what I'm seeing here. So if I can get that clarification from Minister. In which case my question is, why did the Minister not consider a higher threshold, which then more families would be able to benefit? So that's sort of the first question. The second one is around the second part, which is around the abatement rate. So currently, when we're looking at working for family payments, we're looking at abatement abates 27 cents in the dollar. So every dollar earned over that payment reduces by 27 cents, and that's being increased to 27.5 cents, which in fact is, I feel like it's going to be a harsher punishment in some ways because it's 0.5 cents more per dollar, whereas why did then, looking through the risk and looking through the thing, we didn't see a reduction in terms of that particular abatement rate, making it lower, for example, to match and to make it more accessible for families who are above the abatement threshold. So that's my second question. So my 2 questions is around the fact, why didn't we consider a higher threshold in the first place? Because it doesn't seem to be an option that was mentioned in the RIS. And also in terms of the 27 cents going up to 27.5, why didn't we consider making it a little bit lower? And I guess with that, my final question is whether the Minister would consider my amendment on this, which then would adjust the abatement rate to 61,000, which is a higher increase, and also the reduced gradually the rate of 18 cents in the dollar as opposed to the proposed 27.5 cents per the dollar, because then this will be, over, I think, hundreds of thousands of families. They will have more money through a simple and improved working for family system as opposed to what we're seeing here. So would the Minister then finally consider my amendment?
Could you please quote the number of your amendment, please?
I don't think I have a number because it's a tabled amendment.
Okay, you've outlined it anyway, so I've
outlined it. Okay, it should be on the table.
Thank you, we'll find it. Honourable Simon Watts.
No, I'm familiar with the member's amendment. Sadly, I won't be accepting that change. I'll give some context on the reasons why, but the point around the threshold is also in the context of ensuring that is, and the changes that the government have made are fiscally neutral, and so therefore ensuring that the changes are targeted, then the threshold is set. There was a question in regards to minimum wage. Well, the threshold is set above what a two-couple family, both on minimum wage, would be earning, which is in the region of around $96,000. So the threshold is set above that level, and again representing that the government wants to target these initiatives on low and middle income earners.
Honourable Dr Deborah Russell.
Madam Chair, there's a couple of quite technical points I would like to consider. One is that there's, as we know, quite an interaction between the various working for families tax credits, and one of them is the minimum family income credit, the minimum tax. MFTC, minimum family tax credit. Anyway, what it does is it ensures that the minimum income earned by someone in work is just a little bit higher than the income earned by someone on benefit. The objective is to ensure that it is actually worth going into work, and it's a particular tax credit that's been there, I think, since very early on in the start of the Working for Families scheme. It's actually a really complicated interaction between the Working for Families tax credits, the other Working for Families tax credits, and the benefit system and so on. What I'd like to know from the Minister, now I know that minimum family income tax credit gets adjusted every year, but I'd just like to know to what extent his officials engaged with how that particular tax credit is going to need to be adjusted and when we're going to see that adjustment coming through in legislation. I can't say, because it's so complicated, I can't work it backwards myself, so I'm not saying it ought to have been in this legislation, but presumably some work has been done to make sure that that minimum family tax credit still works in the way that it was intended to work through. So a little complicated, but I'm hoping that the Minister can just shed a wee bit of light on that.
Madam Chair.
Right, Honourable Adrian Rurowhai.
Ata mārie e tātou. Madam Chair, I just want to take a brief call in support of my tabled amendment. And my tabled amendment is really about honour and integrity. The honour and integrity of the New Zealand National Party, because in their pre-election fiscal plan, they said that they would have the abatement rate at $50,000. So I'm not saying that they've deliberately misled the country before the last election. I think it's probably just a minor oversight of $5,100, but an oversight nonetheless. And I think it needs to be corrected, and I encourage the Minister to accept the tabled amendment and uphold the mana of the New Zealand National Party. Tēnā tātou.
Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Very much, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions in relation to Clause 7, which is, amends section MD13, and that's specifically relating to raising the threshold in which abating Working for Families tax credits starts to abate, and also the rate in which they abate. And I acknowledge that some of this has been done in order to recognise inflation, but it's important. I just would like to know from the Minister that the National, back in 2023, made some promises in terms of that, and I would just like to ask him to go back and check his notes to see what specifically was promised back in 2023 and whether that actually meets what's being delivered in this bill. My main point that I'd like to speak to, Madam Chair, in relation to those abatement thresholds is that we know that they're clearly defined in the Tax Act, and we know that the threshold is not indexed to wage growth or inflation, and they can be, in fact, amended by primary or even secondary legislation. The abatement rate can be amended, and so in part of the looking back at the 2004 and 2007 Working for Families introduction, a single abatement threshold was set at $35,000 with an abatement rate of 20%. So since 2006, the abatement threshold has been increased on 3 occasions, the latest being in 2018, with that increase to the current threshold of 42,700. Now, with the legislation that's processing that has already processed that relates to pay equity, there will be a number of people who are earning and currently claiming the Working for Families benefit who will continue to need that support because their wages won't increase. Because they may have been entitled under the previous pay equity legislation to be in line for a pay equity claim, which would raise their wages. So my question to the Minister is the government must have done, if it goes to this level of calculating the abatement thresholds, it must have done some calculations to understand what the impact of not providing pay equity settlements for the 33 claims that were underway, but also for all of the other areas that had the potential to proceed through the pay equity process. And we do note that changing that threshold for those female-dominated professions, lifting that up to 70% has excluded some professions like high school teachers, or I think it's also corrections. Some corrections workers fall into that area as well. There's a couple that are at 68% or 67%. So now those areas are excluded from being able to make a pay equity claim. So my question is, if we're looking at this part of Working for Families, surely the public of New Zealand who are not able to submit at Select Committee because of the urgency motion, surely we should have an ability to understand how much more taxpayers will be paying in Working for Families as a result of those 33 different claims now having to need Working for Families tax credit and also qualifying for it. Because if their wages had have increased over time through pay equity claims, then many of those women would be at a higher level where they're financially independent and able to keep paying for butter at $10 or a bit cheaper at Costco if these had proceeded. So the Minister must have some notes there about understanding what the cost to New Zealanders is under additional Working for Families payments, given the fact that those pay equity claims have effectively been shelved by this budget. And I'd also like to point out that a lot of the measures in this budget have been paid for by working women.
Madam Chair.
Rachel Boyack.
I have a short question for the Minister that I just will preface with a little bit of commentary just for context around Best Start. And just for the Minister's reference, I'm working off the bill commentary from Inland Revenue and final page 26, and then I'm also working off the regulatory impact statement, page 15, bullet points 40 and 41, so just for the Minister's reference, and noting that these are the kinds of questions I would have asked in a select committee process to be included in a departmental report, just in terms of the impact of the policy. So the bill commentary obviously discusses the impact on the different tax years, but what applicants will need to undertake in order to be compliant and to access the Best Start payment, particularly with the changes in years, and give some examples of a family in terms of when their child was born. But essentially the clause in the Act is essentially saying that prior to a child being turning 1, it's now being means tested, so there'll need to be an application. My concern, my question for the Minister, just noting if the Minister's noting this, hopefully, my question for the Minister is the calculations. Great, is excellent. 2 working ears, I'm very pleased to hear it, Minister. The calculations on how many families may end up not applying as a result. So what it states in bullet point 41 of the regulatory impact statement on page 15 is that, however, income testing the first year of Best Start will mean that families will have to apply via a separate inland revenue form. As such, fewer families may apply due to increased compliance costs in the application process, resulting in fewer families being identified as eligible for other working for families tax credits. So what I'm asking is, has there been a thorough assessment, because it doesn't then go into the detail, of the impact of extra administration and burden being required on families to apply for Best Start, those that might then drop out and then as a result end up not being able to access the benefits that they're entitled to. And I'd like to know if the Minister has looked at those calculations, has had advice on how many families may then drop out of that application process, and furthermore, what would the impact be on child poverty? Because obviously the Best Start payment is a policy that is designed to address child poverty. That first year is designed to be universal so that all families can access it. And so, I'm concerned reading this regulatory impact statement that fewer families may apply, therefore fewer families may get access to their entitlements, particularly in the first year of a child's life. That means less nappies being purchased, less formula if they're not breastfeeding and the like. So my specific question is, how many families has he actually had those calculations given to him, and what is the specific impact on child poverty?
Honourable Simon Watts.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for those questions. For those tuning in at home, and I know there will be a lot of people watching the tax bill this morning because it's such a good piece of legislation. Good morning, and I hope you're having a great day wherever you are in the country. Let's answer the question, and it's a technical question in regards to the minimum family tax credit. And just for the members' point there, that was adjusted to match increases in main benefits by inflation, and it was adjusted by government in budget 2024. In regards to the amendment by the Right Honourable Adrian Ruawi, we will not be considering that amendment in the context of the point that has been noted. In regards to the question by the Honourable Jenny Anderson, pay equity is out of scope of this bill, and the scenario given was hypothetical and therefore is not something that one would be able to calculate even if it was in scope. And lastly, the question from Rachel Boyack in the context of has there been a thorough assessment in regards to this policy? The short answer is yes.
Adana Williams.
Thank you for the opportunity to take a first call on this bill, and an important bill it is, and I look forward to the Minister's engagement on what is my first question about Clause 7, which I hope will be a back and forth with the Minister. Minister, under Clause 7, 7.1, what number in 2023 did the National Party promise New Zealanders would be in...
I think we're getting to the point on Clause 7 where we've had several questions on Clause 7, and it's the third time I've heard the question around the National Party, and the Minister's actually just answered that one. So do you have some other questions on the actual clauses in the bill?
Madam Chair.
Ingrid Leary.
Just a very quick question. About what cross-agency...
Oh, okay, sorry.
What cross-agency work has been done regarding the Best Start payment, and this is simply because the Ministry of Social Development published a report last week that showed a clear correlation between school attendance and families that were receiving this payment. So strong, in fact, that they almost, if you read the wording of the report, say that it's causal. So given that this government has put money in this budget for school attendance, what analysis did the Minister do, or conversations did he have with MSD officials to find out what the benefits would be to keep the payment in place or if there was going to be this change in threshold, what impact would that have on school attendance? Did he actually have those conversations? Because it would seem really illogical to be putting money in another part of the budget to boost that when the government's own advice shows a clear correlation between the Best Start payment and school attendance.
Honourable Simon Watts.
Madam Chair, I am now getting into a little bit of repetition, but as the member will be aware, if she has read the regulatory impact statement, that cross-agency work has been undertaken in context of all elements of this budget, and the reporting in the context of the way in which these policies interact has been undertaken and will continue to be undertaken.
Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell, new questions,
Yep,
please.
thank you, Madam Chair. I think I do have one last question on Best Start, and then the next set of clauses in Part 1 are to do with KiwiSaver, so I'm pretty ready to move on to the KiwiSaver discussion in just a moment in Part 1, because there are clauses there that do that. So just looking at Best Start, and it is a question. I've already asked about the interaction with the minimum family tax credit. I think the Minister answered that it was adjusted in Budget 24. As far as I can rule, that's usually an annual adjustment at times. So I guess it'll turn up in a future tax bill and something like that. However, having said that, we are taking Best Start away from a number of families, and there is another interaction there, and that is with last year's Family Boost, which came through in the Budget 2024. And I just want to understand if some work was done on the interaction between the Family Boost policy and this new policy taking Best Start away from however many families it takes it away from. I think 53,000 families, or no, that can't be right. 61,000 in total with these abatement changes. So that's, there's a lot of families who are now losing out. So I'd like to know if there was some interaction there. However, having said all that, I think I do think it is time for us to move on to looking at some of the KiwiSaver changes. Now, the KiwiSaver changes in Part 1 are in clauses, let me see, 9 through about 14, 9 through 16, all to do with KiwiSaver. And it's quite a significant change to KiwiSaver. So I think we do need to talk about the policy here as well. So there's three significant changes we need to talk about. The first is the extension of the KiwiSaver tax, KiwiSaver 260.
Can I just ask a question here on the KiwiSaver part? So there's a large chunk of KiwiSaver in Part 2. So if there's something specific to Part 1, could you point to exactly where it is? Because
absolutely.
we have the large part of the discussion on KiwiSaver on Part 2.
Well, I disagree, Madam Chair. If we look at Clause 13, that is exactly where the...
That's what I'm asking for, right? I just want the House to be clear as to what's in Part 1 and what's in Part 2.
So in Part 1, we actually have the bit where, the place where, in Clause 13, it's where the actual change to the tax credit sits. So that's the clause that does the actual work. We also have in, that we actually need to look at that tax credit there. At Clause 9, Clause 9 has the change to introduces the threshold.
That's fine. I'm not disagreeing with the member. I know the member understands this very well, but I'm just making it clear for the House.
Yep, thank you. To be honest, it's a bit hard getting up to speed with it just overnight, but we're getting there, Oh, well, right.
I think we'll leave the member who's speaking to the questions. Thank you. Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell is speaking.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do want to talk about the general policy. And there are three policy changes. One is extending KiwiSaver to 16 and 17-year-olds. That's sitting in the tax credit part of that is sitting in Clause 10. We need to talk about introducing a threshold, an upper threshold for KiwiSaver. That's introducing the $180,000 threshold. That's sitting in Clause 9. Maybe 10.3. And the other one is the actual change in the tax credit. So sitting in there. So I would like to talk to the Minister first. Why? KiwiSaver has been an enormously successful policy. It has been enormously successful in getting people to save for their retirement. It has been enormously successful in helping people to build their retirement changes. Now, it was introduced by Sir Michael Cullen, and it was a far-sighted policy. People are now engaging with saving and so on. So why then turn around and knock some of the incentives for KiwiSaver? Why turn around and say that it's important to have a threshold in there now? Why turn around and reduce the member tax credit? Now, I tautoko the change to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to participate in KiwiSaver. That's an excellent change, and it gets people going early. So, of course, we agree with that change. We really support it, but we nevertheless look at the disincentives now. And I want to know from the Minister why, when we are all deeply concerned about retirement savings, would they introduce this sort of policy?
Honourable Simon Watts.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not going to engage in a deep degree of policy because part 2 of this bill deals with the KiwiSaver, but the aim of the changes made primarily are to ensure that KiwiSaver is more sustainable. The impact of the GVC on the overall retirement savings is likely to be small, and the change actually increases value for money.
Tom Rutherford.
On this question.
I've got a point of order coming from the left.
Madam Chair, and just seeing the excitement of the government MPs and noting, looking at Speaker's ruling 68.4, because we're in urgency, I notice there's at least 2 members from 2 other opposition parties who have not spoken yet on this.
Can I make the point? I've had a discussion with the clerk about this, and I know that Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell's asked some specific questions to Part 1, but most of the KiwiSaver is in Part 2, and we're not going to shut down the conversation on KiwiSaver. And if there's something in Part 2 that the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell refers to in Part 1 as a result of asking her questions in Part 2, then we can build on that. Tom, speaking to the point of order.
Clarification was from Speaker's ruling 68/4 that there are still members who are seeking the call that haven't actually had the opportunity to we don't know what they're actually going to talk about. That was
I do get that, but I am going to accept a call from Tom Rutherford because I do believe we're going to get ourselves into a bind here where we're going to, I fully believe that we can answer the questions and members are welcome to bring them up in Part 2. Tom Rutherford.
I move that debate on this question now
close. The question is that debate on this question now close. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for. Please, Clerk, conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā pōti whakahe.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono ngā pōti kore I whakae.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed. The question is that Arana Williams' tabled amendment to Clause 4 to delete new section CC 15 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā pōti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 against.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
O ngā pōti e whakai ana.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Clause 4, new section CC 15 to change 25% to 40% be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote is being called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
Opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ona ngā poti e whakai ana.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Clause 4, new section CC 15(4) to insert single be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono ngā poti whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to Clause 5 to delete new section DI1 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono ngā poti I whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to Clause 5 to delete new section DI2 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti I whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to Clause 5 to delete new section DI3 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti I whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to Clause 5 to delete new section DI4 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti I whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 5 to delete new section DI 4A1 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clark. What are we doing now?
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te ko marima ngā pōti whakaai.
ACT, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E whakai.
Ka whai ana.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Celia Wade-Brown's tabled amendment to clause 5, new section DI 4A3 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te ko marima ngā pōti whakaai.
ACT, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 5 to delete new section DI 4A6 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te ko marima ngā pōti whakaai.
ACT, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Honourable Rachel Brooking's tabled amendment to clause 5 to delete new section DI 4A6 and 8 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. The ayes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te ko marima ngā pōti whakaai.
ACT, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to clause 5 to delete new section DI 4A7 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for. Please, Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Ko marima ngā pōti whakaai.
ACT, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Te e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Honourable Dr Duncan Webb's tabled amendment to clause 5, new section DI4B to insert subparagraph 5 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote has been called for, please, Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te ko marima ngā pōti whakaai.
ACT, New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aruna Williams's tabled amendment to clause 5 to delete new section DI5 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote is being called for, please, Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā pōti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
Good morning, members. The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 5, new section DI5 brackets 1 to replace 0.2 with 0.1 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. The party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā pōti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr Megan Woods' tabled amendment to clause 5, new section DI5 brackets 1, to change the formula to 0.27 to, expenditure contribution be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. The party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
9 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
Opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Ingrid Leary's tabled amendment to clause 5, new section DI5 brackets 1, to change the formula to 0.25 times expenditure contribution be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Ayes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Ingrid Leary's tabled amendment to clause 5, new section DI5 brackets 1, to change the formula to 0.22 times expenditure contribution be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Honourable Dr Megan Woods has tabled amendment to clause 5, new section DI5 brackets 1 to change the formula to 0.3 times expenditure contribution be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kauma rima ngā puti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā puti e whakai.
Members, the ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Arana Williams' tabled amendment to clause 5 to delete new section DI6 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote is called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kauma rima ngā puti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā puti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 5, new section DI6 brackets B be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kauma rima ngā puti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendments to clause 7 brackets 1 and 2 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā puti e whakai.
Members, the ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Arana Williams' tabled amendment to clause 7 brackets 1 to replace 44,900 with 50,000 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Ayes have it. Party vote. A party vote is called for, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kauma rima ngā puti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
First.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā puti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Right Honourable Adrian Ruarafi's tabled amendments to clause 7 brackets 1 and 2 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote, Mr Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
first.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Arana Williams's tabled amendment to clause 7 brackets 2 to replace 44,900 with 50,000 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Guess what? Party vote, please.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
first.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 8, section MG3 brackets 2 brackets B Roman numeral 1 to replace 1st of April 2026 with 22nd May 2025 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote, Mr. Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
first.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Honourable Barbara Edmonds' tabled amendment to delete clause 8 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Ayes have it. Party vote, Mr. Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
4 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
first.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Arana Williams's tabled amendment to clause 11 to delete new section MK2B be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Party vote, Mr. Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
first.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 13 to delete subclauses brackets 2A and 3 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr. Clark.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
first.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that the Honourable Dr Deborah Russell's tabled amendment to clause 13 to delete subclauses brackets 2 and 4 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakae.
Act, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. Honourable Barbara Edmonds' tabled amendment to clause 13 brackets 2A and B is out of order as being inconsistent with the principle and objects of the bill. The question is that Glenn Bennett's tabled amendment to clause 13 brackets 2B to replace $260.72 with $450 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakae.
Act, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti I whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Glenn Bennett's tabled amendment to clause 13 brackets 2B to replace $260.72 with $400 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. A party vote, please, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakae.
Act, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono ngā poti I whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Honourable Dr Deborah Russell's tabled amendment to clause 13 brackets 2B to replace $260.72 with $500 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakae.
Act, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand
8
first.
votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti I whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 16 brackets 1 be agreed to. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumārima ngā poti whakae.
Act, New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti I whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed to. The question is that part 1 stand part. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. A party vote is called for, Mr Clerk.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand
8
first.
votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti I whakai. Sorry, point of order. The other one. Kore I whakai. Sorry.
Could I ask the Te Pāti Māori to repeat their vote, please?
E ono ngā pōti, kore I whakai.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed to. Members, we now come to part 2. This is the debate on clauses 17 to 30, which are the amendments to other enactments. Part 2 contains changes to the KiwiSaver regime, as well as changes to the Tax Administration Act 1994. The question is that part 2 stand part. Point of order, the Right Honourable Adrian Rowfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I refer to two matters. Before the closure motion and the vote on part 1, the Chair seemed to indicate that despite the end of part 1, that those elements of the KiwiSaver from part 1 could be debated in part 2. I just want to confirm that that's the case, mainly because it is a bit odd, given that we've voted on amendments to KiwiSaver clauses, but that's what she indicated. There were very few calls on the KiwiSaver, and I note that colleagues from the Green Party and Te Pāti Māori were seeking calls, but we're not given the opportunity to speak on that part of part 1.
I understand.
So my question, just for clarity of the committee, is have I heard that correctly?
You have heard that correctly, sir. I was watching the debate and I heard the previous chair make reference to being able to go back where relevant into clause 1, as it relates to KiwiSaver. Speaking to the point of order.
I just want to really, really clarify this because with respect to the operative changes to the KiwiSaver regime actually occurred in part 1. The chair seemed to think that we could in actual fact discuss those operative changes in part 2, but that's going to be very hard because we can't relate them to a clause in part 2. They actually sit in part 1. So may I suggest that in terms of the amendments in part 2 are very, very technical and just to do with a very small part of the changes. So may I suggest that we have, provided we bring up new points, that we have a rather more thematic debate in part 2 around KiwiSaver. We could confine it to KiwiSaver and always make sure we are bringing up a new idea rather than repeating ideas, rather than trying to relate specifically to clauses.
I'll just take some advice from the clerk. Speaking to the point of order, Tim van der Molen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is obviously under Part 2, Clause 17, which relates to KiwiSaver, and my understanding of the comments from the Chair during the previous part were that KiwiSaver can of course be debated in Part 2 because there is a clause for that, but it would not be appropriate to give the committee the ability to rehash everything in Clause 1 aspects of KiwiSaver because of course that's been dealt with, voted on and completed under that part, so it should indeed be constrained to this part.
We're all in agreement. I think everyone understands. And I did listen to the previous chair and she has provided me with confirmation of her ruling. So I think you're correct, Dr. Russell, that we can refer back to Clause 1 as it relates to the KiwiSaver, but I think we'll just see how the substantive questions come through, and to your point about the repetition, we will be very alert to that. Thank you. I'll call the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
So, speaking to the amendments to KiwiSaver in general, there is some debate that we need to have around the substantive changes. Now, in actual fact, I want to speak, there are 3 substantive changes, and I think we'll need to speak, to the policy intent behind them. The 3 substantive changes are, 1, the change to the member tax credit, which is going to is being halved, so it's going down to $240 something other dollars. The second substantial change, and it's a change that this party at least supports, is the change to enable 16 and 17-year-olds to participate in KiwiSaver, to receive employer contributions, and to receive the member tax credit. Now, given that we agree to that in this party, my party doesn't feel the need particularly to discuss that particular change for 16 and 17-year-olds other than to endorse it. But the third substantive change is the change that puts in a top threshold for KiwiSaver, and it says that people earning over $180,000 may not receive the member tax credit. I have 2 points I want to make about that one. Now, I'm asked, the 2 points are these. The first question is, why $180,000? What was the particular policy rationale around $180,000? Now, it's clear that it links to the top tax threshold. So the top tax threshold is also $180,000. So it's an interesting point because people earning over $180,000, and that is a substantial income in New Zealand, first of all, their tax rate increases after $180,000, and now they don't get the KiwiSaver tax credit either. So I'm hoping it wasn't just a convenience thing at $180,000, that there was actually some substantial fiscal analysis that said that, in actual fact, we think people earning over around about that amount of money are likely to be able to save without needing that extra credit from the government, that they would be in a position to do that anyway. So I'd just like to know from the Minister what advice they got around that substantive change around $180,000. So that's the first question I have to ask around that threshold change. The other one around the threshold change is just a very precise one. It just seems to me, from the way it's written, that a person who earns $179,999 will get the member tax credit. A person who earns $180,001 will not get the member tax credit. So there's just a little flex point there where in actual fact you're going to end up worse off earning a tiny bit more money than if you earned a tiny bit less money. Now, in other places in the income tax system, we try really hard to make sure that people do not end up worse off because of a tax change that pushes them up or over a threshold. An example of that is the minimum family tax credit. So I just want to know what happens to people who sit right on that cusp, who, if they just get a tiny, wage increase, a tiny salary increase, end up earning just a little too much to get the member tax credit. What was the thinking around that? Was there any analysis done around that? I get that we have to draw a line somewhere. So the 2 questions: why was the line drawn there, and what happens to people who just fall either side of that threshold?
Honourable, Dr. Lawrence Sunan.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. My question is similar to what the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell has mentioned as well. And again, we're really appreciative, Madam Chair, of your clarity around this. And I think when we're looking at the operative elements of this, I know that we have voted on this, which is, but my question is around, in part 1, tying into part 2, because part 2, in terms of the KiwiSaver, sometimes we're looking at the contribution rate adjustment and also the reduction rate. So they are mainly the operationalization of how the KiwiSaver will look like from an employee and employer perspective. But I guess the fundamental question we're looking at part 1, and although I think there's this narrative that, we're looking at making sure that more people are putting into KiwiSaver and etc., but fundamentally we're seeing that we are asking if I'm correct, we're asking New Zealanders to pay more out of their wages, which would affect people on the minimum wage as it is, in order so that the government isn't going to be able to contribute as much, which is what we're seeing in Clause 13 of Part 1. Hence, we're looking at increasing the contribution rate adjustment from a baseline 3% to a baseline 4%. So I wanted to check with the minister that if the government is really looking at, wanting to ensure that New Zealanders could save up enough for their KiwiSaver, why has the government considered reducing the government contribution from $521.43 to $260.72 by half? And also, as a result of that, adjusting the threshold from half to quarter. So that's kind of my first question regarding some of the more broader policy questions on the government contribution element. But I also wanted to check in terms of let's say with Part 2, when we're looking at Clause 18, when we're looking at the idea of this transition in terms of the reduction rate going from 3% to 3.5 to 4%, why was the increase going up to 4%? Why was the 1st of April 2026 as a figure picked? Because again, we're looking at sort of this arbitrary, unless it's a specific policy requirement or a rationale that the minister could highlight, it seems like an arbitrary data that we kind of have been put across in terms of some of these. So those are my two questions for the time being. So again, we're kind of dancing back and forth between Part 1 and Part 2 a little bit, but in the broader scope of things, when we're looking at the government contribution changes, why has the government decided to contribute less towards people's KiwiSaver? And then also in terms of the rate reduction as a starting point, why was those particular dates picked to transition from 3% to 3.5 to 4?
Madam Chair.
Thank you. I call the Honourable Simon Watts.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In answer to the questions regarding income thresholds relating to clauses 20 and 22, the income thresholds were considered. The government decided that 180,000 was the appropriate level in which earners do not need additional government support. The benefit and value for money in providing GVC to low and median income earners under 180,000 was seen as the most targeted mechanism in order to achieve that. In addition to that, research suggests that low to medium income earners need more support than higher income earners as they have other forms of savings. So that is the policy rationale in regards to clauses 20 and 22 in regards to the income threshold. The question raised in regards to people that sit above and below 180,000, it is no different to any other bright line number used in regards to taxation. There is a threshold, and those above will be subject to it, and those below will not. In regards to clause 18, in regards to the question on the threshold increasing from 3 to 3.5 and the timing of that, the government considered to ensure that there was appropriate time for both employers and employees to be prepared to increase those contributions, and hence why the date, just under a year out from today, was considered appropriate, and that was then balanced with the further increase over the period of the next 3 years. Providing certainty to business is a key objective of this government.
Call Ingrid Leary.
A quick question on sub-part 3B rate reduction, which talks about required may be no less than 92 days, no more than 1 year. I understand the philosophy around 92 days is probably around not having frivolous applications. Interesting number, 92, so keen to understand the rationale, but also no more than a year. There seems to be an assumption that the circumstances will have changed, or a pressure, if you like, to make it that the amount will change after that 1 year. I'm wondering what happens in the event that circumstances haven't changed. Will somebody be eligible to be able to apply beyond, will they have to do a new application? Will they have to submit all the information that is required under section 101L2 or would they just be able to seek some kind of an extension? And what is the policy reason for that? Thank you.
Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
I just want to follow on from my colleague Ingrid Leary's question at rates, not so much around the policy around that, but just thinking of the compliance costs that are associated with these rate reductions. Now, it's an interesting because the rate can be reduced from 4% to 3%, so a difference of 1% in what a person contributes to KiwiSaver, and the implication is that that will help with the cost of living. It seems like a fairly small amount to be changing around there, but I get that some people may feel the need to do that. Particularly we've seen and just reported in the news today that in the last year or so, more people have been withdrawing KiwiSaver for hardship reasons than for housing reasons. But given that kind of quite small economic benefit, what was the trade-off with compliance costs there? So that Part 2 concerns itself very largely with that rate change, and it does talk about, it's quite a complicated procedure. So there's quite a significant compliance cost for an individual to go through and get that rate reduction. So I wonder what thought was given to the trade-off there between compliance costs and the benefits to the individual. But it's not just the compliance costs either. There's that I want to think about is for the individual, but also for the employer. So there's a set of compliance costs there. But then there's some work that must need to be done within Inland Revenue's own systems to enable those changes to take place as well. So there's a set of costs to the government in terms of how it actually sets up the systems in order to accommodate this particular change in the rates. So I'd just like to hear from the Minister what consideration was given to those three sets of costs: compliance costs for the individual, compliance costs for the employer, compliance costs for Inland Revenue and government systems in that space.
Madam Chair.
Fernando Hernandez.
Thank you. I appreciate the call, and I hope you can hear me from all the way back here. I've chosen to sit here because I have the theory that you're more likely to get called when you're in the speaker's line of sight. But on to my questions. I have specific questions around the general cumulative impact of the changes, some in Part 1, as the previous speakers have already articulated, and some in Part 2. Because my questions relate specifically to what the impacts of these changes might be on migrant communities. We know that migrants come here later on in their life, so won't have had the opportunity to contribute to KiwiSaver as much as, for example, if someone was born in New Zealand, they were here all their lives, they would have been contributing to KiwiSaver from when they started working. I started working when I was 13 years old. I was a paper boy, so from 13 years old to potentially when they retire to 65, some end up working longer than that. So, but we know that some migrants end up coming here later in their life. So, for example, someone who comes here when they're 30 or 35, for example, and so they will have had less opportunities to contribute to their KiwiSaver. So, what are the impacts of having the contribution rate that the government has had? Will that have the potential to create disparities in terms of communities that are more likely to come from migrant backgrounds, for example, the Asian community, acknowledging, of course, that just because you're a migrant doesn't necessarily mean that you're Asian and vice versa. Some communities here are actually quite well established from the Asian communities. And I'm thinking, for example, in Dunedin, some of the families there have been there since, in the era of Chinese gold mining, since the 1800s. So we can't necessarily equate the two, but we do know that that there are likelihoods. I have also questions about whether there's been much engagement in terms of whether there was specific feedback from the Retirement Commission on the impacts of these changes, because I'm looking at a body of work that they did a few years ago, and it's titled "Research Highlights Widespread Disparities in the Experiences of Māori in retirement. And this is a series of papers that they issued regarding the gaps in wealth between Māori and non-Māori, and how that might impact the potential for Māori in retirement. So paper 1 kind of goes over the structural, historical, and political factors. Paper 2 is a literature review by Dr. Margaret Kempton that acknowledges that obviously Māori
Can you come to the question, please, Francis?
Oh, this is part of the question. Was there engagement in terms of the Retirement Commission, and was the 4 papers that the Retirement Commission did in terms of research highlights widespread disparities in experience Māori have in retirement? Did that factor into the sort of analysis and the work that the department did in terms of estimating the broad impact of these changes? So I'll leave my contribution for there. I might want to take some follow-up calls depending on how the Minister's answers, but thank you for the opportunity.
I call the Honourable Simon Watts.
Well, thank you very much, members. In regards to answers to questions relating to the temporary rate reduction in regards to individuals being able to select for a period of time a reduction back to 3%. This is clauses 18, 19, 23, 24 and 25. All of those clauses relate to the temporary rate reduction point. This is providing choice for employees, depending on their financial circumstances, that they have a 92-day period, which is in effect 3 months, to be able to apply for that rate reduction. That would be based on their personal circumstances. They can reapply as many times as they wish in regards to that rate reduction. And the process that will be involved is considered appropriate and is not overwhelming in the context of administration. In regards to the questions around compliance and burden, IRD have and did consider the costs in the context of compliance. They also will be managing the administration costs of this through baselines. We did take on board feedback from the Retirement Commissioner, who also noted and has made statements in the context of the benefits of increased savings, which will result as a result of this policy. And lastly, to the question in regards to working parents, if I use working parent family with children as an example, under the status quo versus under this policy, a working parent at the time at which they purchase a first home or use the KiwiSaver for a first home deposit will have 9% more savings from $15,800 to $17,281, and at retirement age a working parent family will have 26% more savings, total from $397,000 for the household to $500,000. These changes will derive a significant uplift in benefits for New Zealanders in the context of retirement, and also in regards to their KiwiSaver balances, which they can use to buy their first home.
Murray Mino Kapakingi.
Madam Chair, thank you. I think I heard a comment earlier around tax and this whole debate this morning and how it does leave me a bit cold in reality, but in fact, unfortunately, in this context, it'll probably leave too many Māori families out in the cold. So I want to start my discussion in that way. I want to, Minister, if you can, and it's a little bit, I think, in the previous section, but I'll land with this section now, Madam Chair, regarding Adrian Rudolph's discussion earlier. Has the government considered the cumulative impact of these changes alongside rising living costs, housing pressures and other benefit changes affecting low income and Māori whānau? I live in a community up in Te Tai Tokerau that is Northland, and like many of my colleagues, rural Māori communities and urban Māori communities actually, Minister, are of a particular interest to us. All families are actually. And so this is the context of my questions. Will the Minister... All right, so what assessment was made of how this policy affects equity outcomes? Will the Minister release the full cost-benefit analysis or distributional impact modelling used to inform this policy change? And how does the Minister justify a faster reduction in support for struggling families? There's a phrase up in the far north, we talk about living at poverty in paradise. Sadly, too many of those that are forced and struggling in this thing called a poverty reality, Minister, I don't see them in these ideas which are now policy and now will be made law, sadly. What protections or transitional measures are in place to ensure families don't suddenly lose crucial financial support? How will the government monitor and evaluate the impact? And now I'm going to come to clause 18, if I may. Definitions of rate reduction introduces a new term. So this allows for a formal process where individuals can temporarily lower their contribution rate due to financial need. And clause 19, the evidence of rate reduction for new employees. How will these amendments ensure that Māori participation and retention in KiwiSaver are not adversely affected? Has an impact assessment, an actual impact assessment, been done specifically on and with whānau Māori regarding these amendments? What measures are in place to monitor if these legislative changes disproportionately, and they will disproportionately disadvantage Māori whānau? What mechanisms, Minister, if you can, what mechanisms does the government have in place to remove barriers to applying for rate reductions? Minister, it is difficult for Māori to engage with these processes in plain language, whether the language is well, more often than not, it's English, and it's not Māori enough, sadly. And how is government going to mitigate these issues for Māori communities? These are real and actual issues for whānau Māori in rural communities and urban communities. Many of the process, the clinical, technical process that you're forced down into a lane, Minister, they are already alienating. They are difficult to navigate. And when processes like this are that difficult, the end result will always be either frustration, anger, and just basically giving up and do what you need to do type of process, Minister. So I am really interested, keen, and hope that you can give some genuine thought to these questions, these places that I'm talking about, particularly our Māori places and people, and that they are understood in some of your responses. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Simon Watts.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just in regards to the last two questions, as we know, a large proportion of youth in New Zealand are Maori and Pacifica. And as a direct result of this government's changes in the context of KiwiSaver changes related to this clause, allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to be eligible for KiwiSaver, a large proportion of youth who are Maori and Pacifica will now be better off in the context of KiwiSaver than they were in the status quo, and that should be celebrated. IRD provides its services in multiple languages, including print and phone, including obviously in Māori and other languages. And if the member or if any individual in New Zealand is not fluent in English, then they can call IRD on 0800 700 342.
Ingrid Leary.
Madam Chair, and in the spirit of back and forth with the Minister, I'd just like to acknowledge that he has put on the record on Hansard the ability for people to apply as many times as they would like for that, what is essentially a kind of hardship allowance to be able to go to the 3%. I guess my points would be picking up on the previous speaker that the ability for those who need that 3% because of cost of living pressures is likely to be less than for those who are in higher income brackets. And so I would wonder if the Minister would consider perhaps that a reapplication process could be put in place, or if he would be prepared to put on the Hansard that there would be no no jeopardy for those people, that every application would be considered either as a starting point so that the Commissioner would not look back and go, well, you've already applied 10 times and therefore we're going to get hard on you. If the circumstances have not changed, then they have not changed, and perhaps there could be a process that just enables that access, because currently, as has been pointed out, there is a difficulty with access. The other point I would like to go to is just around the refund if a person cannot apply in subpart 3B, Section 101T, and really interesting language here where it talks about the employer may refund the amount to the person, and then again in subsection 6 that the Commissioner may refund the amount determined under subsection 2 if the money is held by the Commissioner. To some extent, I understand the subclause 6 more, because it would seem that a discretion like that for a Commissioner is probably appropriate, but I would like to understand still in that subsection why the Commissioner must not. For subsection 2, I think very different principles apply, because here the legislation is giving the employer a kind of discretion around refunding monies to people who cannot comply, and there is a clear set out formula in the legislation about contributions deducted minus rate reduction amount. I don't understand why this legislation would create this kind of discretion, which just makes it even more difficult for the employee to be able to get monies if they cannot comply. Also puts a bit of an unfair pressure on the employer, who now becomes judge and juror of the situation. To my mind, that would be better really if the monies either had to go back to the employee or had to go to the Commissioner, who would then apply that discretion. The employer is not an agent of the state, and it is putting an unfair burden, in my view, both on the employee but also on the employer to be able to having to make those decisions. So really the wording, Minister, I haven't got a formal amendment to this as far as I'm aware, but would the Minister consider making it that the employer must give that refund, or would the Minister consider striking that out and replacing it with something that requires those monies to go to the Commissioner, who would then apply that appropriate discretion, although even then the way the legislation is meant to be operating, if I understand it, really the Commissioner should be giving that money back to the person who cannot comply.
Ryan Hamilton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I've just got a question regarding the rate reduction 15B, subpart 3B, and it's good that obviously Kiwis will have a choice to opt back or opt down. That's quite good for us on the side of the House, Madam Speaker, because we're all about personal responsibility. But I just wonder if the Minister is satisfied with the way it's worded. So in 101L3, for the purposes of subsection 2C, the period for which the rate reduction is required must be no less than 92 days before and no more than 1 year. And I just want to check that the Minister is happy with the way that's landed in legislation. And Madam Speaker, as we're just about at the end of part 2, just at the very end, I've just got a question for clarification from the Minister. This is point 29, section 80 KB amended, contents of application. So for reference, it's on page 16 of the bill. Again, and just seeking clarification from the Minister, 29, section 80 KB amended, contents of application. Number 1, in section 80 KB 1C, in the words before the sub-paragraphs replace, quote, on the last day of the tax year, end quote, with, quote, on the last day of the tax year, and that tax year is before the 26-27 tax year, end quote. And also 3, just at the bottom of page 16, just for your reference, Madam Speaker and Minister, in section 80 KB, brackets 1, brackets G, replace, quote, on the last day of the tax year, end of quote, with, quote, on the last day of the tax year, and that tax year is before the 26-27 tax year, end quote. And similarly, it goes on in section 30, which actually brings us right to the end of the whole bill in part, Madam Speaker. But I just before we go to deliberation, I just really was after some clarification from the Minister, and we'd really appreciate his response on that. Thank you.
A cunning plan, Mr Hamilton, but we're not there yet. Honourable Willow-Jean Prime.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I am, good try, trying to jump right ahead to the end. Madam Chair, I am wanting to ask follow-up questions to the Minister's response to the questions from Maria Mino Kapakingi, and in particular around the impact that these changes will have on Māori. The point that the Minister made was that the inclusion of 16 and 17-year-olds and the number of Māori who make up that group. But what I want to ask the Minister is, what does he say to the Retirement Commissioner, Jane Wrightson, who said that low-income earners, Māori, women and self-employed people would be the hardest hit by the reduction of the member tax credit? What impact can the Minister tell us that these changes will have in particular for Māori?
Madam Chair.
Honourable Simon Watts.
Madam Chair, I've already provided an answer in regards to that question, so I won't repeat myself. In regards to the question on the rate reduction, I want to confirm that the process will be an automatic approval, and there is no hardship criteria in regards to taxpayers that are seeking a rate reduction. The protocol in regards to the timeline for a rate reduction is also consistent with existing savings suspension protocol under KiwiSaver, and that therefore ensures that compliance costs are saved. I want to answer the question by the member Ryan Hamilton in regards to section 29. Just to clarify that this provides for different dates of birth for individuals, and the drafting of the rates reduction, they all follow standard processes for savings suspension. So I hope that clarifies the questions asked in regards to all of clause 29.
Lawrence Sunan.
I want to pick up on something the Minister said before, and again it comes back to 16 and 17-year-olds being eligible for KiwiSaver. And I think, from what we're hearing and what the Minister said, that it is a good idea. But one of the things that one of the previous speaker picked up on, and this is a different perspective of that, is it was talking about the KiwiSaver in the context of the government's attendance package. However, one of the things we have found, particularly during the pandemic and due to the cost of living crisis post-pandemic, and this again follows on from Maria Mino Kapakingi's question around Māori and Pacifica and also rural families' perspective, is that we do see 16 and 17-year-olds or potentially younger having to leave school or no longer able to attend school because of the fact that they have to work to support their families. And although 16 and 17-year-olds being eligible to KiwiSaver is a good idea, but I wondered if the Minister had any advice around the fact that whether this will have an adverse, an adverse response, in the sense that then we're going to be seeing more and more people who will leave school early, or more and more people who are not even leaving school but simply not attending school because then they will need to go and work because now they have this new incentive, which is that their salary will be contributing towards their KiwiSaver. So that's one of my first questions to the Minister. But picking up on what what the member opposite was talking about in terms of people being able to opt out of the rate reduction, I wanted to check with the Minister on what was the rationale behind allowing people to only do it for 1 year and having to reapply for it every single year. Now, yes, I agree that having people being able to opt out is a good idea, but people who are probably doing that are already working 2, 3, sometimes 4 jobs. They're working 60 to 80 hours a week, and yet now we're adding on this additional burden to them, administrative burden for them, that they have to now do it every single year or opt in every single year and reapply and go through all of the process. As we have seen with the saga that is Family Boost, people don't necessarily have the time to do that, and IRD is not the most user-friendly department and in terms of application process. So when they do something like this and you're asking people to do it once every year, would that then put, unfortunately, undue burden on people having to do that? So I wonder if the minister would consider my amendment, which is that people then do this to opt out, and they are opt out for as long as they want to, until they are happy to opt back into the system again, and increasing their rate reduction to go back up from to 4% as opposed to 3%, as opposed to having to do it on an annual basis. I know there are some other questions that other people have asked in terms of 90 days, but I'll leave that to the minister. But those are my two questions on whether there's been any advice the minister received around adverse effect of 16, 17-year-olds now no longer attending school because now I got this additional incentive of being opted into KiwiSaver, and also whether the minister will consider my amendments in terms of the rate reduction opt-out to be longer than 1 year.
The Honourable Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Well, firstly, I'm disappointed that members of the opposition, and particularly the Greens, are voting against this legislation, voting against 16 and 17-year-old New Zealanders to be eligible for KiwiSaver. I don't think that sends a very positive signal, but I do acknowledge government for taking a step out. 85,000 young people will now benefit from KiwiSaver, something that you are opposing. In the context of the points around clause section 10.2, the ability to take a savings reduction in the context of this provides members with choice, and the context around the 12-month element ensures that we want to be able to boost members' abilities to save in KiwiSaver, and therefore the need to have to reapply does provide an opportunity to reconsider one's position and whether they want to continue to invest or not.
The Honourable Megan Woods.
Mr Chairman, and I have a question for the Minister around clause 23, which is also on the rate reduction section where this is specified. My colleague from the Green Party has asked about whether there was any consideration of not having to reapply every year. But my question for the Minister is whether any modelling has been done around the need to reapply every year to qualify for for a lower rate, say 3%, whether or not this is going to disincentivise people being involved in KiwiSaver at all, whether it will mean that they stop their contributions and they aren't participating in the scheme, and whether the Minister received any advice around withdrawal from KiwiSaver because of the administrative burden, and what the distributional impacts of that would be. Mr Chair.
Ingrid Leary.
Mr Chair, you can see that the opposition parties have an issue with the compliance burden and also just the restrictive nature of subpart 3B, and I'm wondering if we look at 101M grant of rate reduction where the Commissioner must give the rate reduction for the period specified if it has been applied in that way. If we look separately at 101N, the Commissioner must give notice of the grant of rate reduction under a subpart 2 of the date on which the rate reduction will end. As it is written and without clarification, it does appear there could be a discretion for the Commissioner to actually give that reduction for a period longer. It is only the previous clause that requires it to be for the period which was applied for. I'm wondering if the Minister could clarify whether, in his view, that might be a way that the Commissioner, with his discretion, his or her discretion, would be able to actually overcome these issues of equity that are going to impact Māori, women and so on, or would he amend 101N to clarify the restrictive nature of that clause if he believes that it must be pegged to 101N, the previous clause before it?
Maria Mino Kapakingi.
Possibly I missed the answer, but or maybe I didn't put the question, so here it goes again. Can the Minister explain, please, has an impact? Oh, no, actually, let me just go back to the 16-17 KiwiSaver and how we don't, it seems you think we don't get that. Oh, sorry, Minister. We get that. I'm interested, therefore, to know what the actual numbers of young Māori 16, 17-year-olds in this KiwiSaver, or what are those numbers? I'd be interested to know if you know those, and the Minister knows those, and that would be helpful for me to get a bit of a better picture on that. As well, an impact assessment being done, has there been an impact assessment done specifically on Māori whānau regarding these particular amendments? All measures have a direct impact on whānau Māori when systems often alienate. So, with that in mind, what measures are in place to monitor these changes disproportionately disadvantaging Māori? I might have said something similar in a previous question, Minister, but I didn't hear the answer clearly enough, possibly. What mechanisms does the government have in place to remove barriers to applying these rate reductions? You might have heard me mention the other day this thing called DWB, driving while brown. That's very much in the 16 to 20-year-old Māori young people band. So when you're driving while brown and you get stopped, when you're profiled and lots of photos are taken, Minister, I don't know. I know. Sorry, I don't mean to cause. I don't mean to cause the minister's face to change quite like that. But that is the context, and unless you understand it, the ideas that come out of the mind that produces this are simply going to fail. So I am doing my best to assist the Minister by asking these really useful questions, and I'm looking forward to reciprocal responses. It is difficult to engage with these systems. I've said that, and I hope that's understood. And how, Minister, will you mitigate these issues for Māori communities in a Māori way? Appreciate your responses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The Honourable Dr. Duncan Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just looking at clause 25 of the bill, and that clause deals with non-compliance of financial institutions with the Financial Markets Conduct Act and financial markets legislation and the Fair Trading Act. And as I understand it, the Minister can correct me if I'm wrong, this is to allow for the fact that there's this raft of changes to KiwiSaver contribution rates, what have you, and government contributions. And there will be material out there, disclosure statements, just advertisements, flyers, what have you, and it will say things like, if you contribute this $1,000 and something, you will get the government contribution of $500, and that's no longer accurate. So I get that, but I guess one of the questions I have, or the real question is that clause, or the 244, the new 244B says that when the non-compliance relates to a product disclosure statement or other disclosure document, and that doesn't continue on or after 1 January 2026. So we're here in May, and it appears, because these documents are by definition misleading. These are critical documents to the financial decision-making of New Zealanders. And this provision says, in essence, up until 1 January next year, you can give people misleading information about investment decisions. Now, I can understand a short period of grace because of the way this is done. But the fact is that there's $66,000 worse off over their career as a result of this reduction in the government contribution, and that's not being put to them. In fact, the opposite is being put to them, that they're being presented with a disclosure document or going online and clicking on the disclosure document and going, oh goody, the government will give me $500 a year, and it hasn't been changed. Now, I guess the question is this, have I got that right? And why is it not that best endeavours must be used? And why is the period so long? If it's a website, an electronic document, it could be edited within days or weeks, and yet there's over 6 months that this information can be in the public domain. And that's how most disclosure happens nowadays, electronically. The days of having boxes of prospectuses and disclosure statements are well past us. And I accept that there are going to be some flyers and some leaflets, and in fact they should be shredded. The short answer is they should be shredded because they're no longer accurate, they're in fact misleading. I wouldn't want to hold the financial institutions liable if in some office in the back corner someone forgets to shred them and one accidentally gets out. But what this does is says you don't need to do anything for over 6 months. So it's really quite problematic. Now, I'm hoping that good financial institutions to comply with their COFI obligations will immediately inform their investors and potential clients that these changes are being made and that the long-term contributions of the government will fall and that there's a different contribution framework for employer and employee contributions going forward. But the suggestion that there's no need to amend those disclosures, whether those disclosures those new provisions come into force immediately or not, the fact is that KiwiSaver is a long-term investment strategy and the rules are appertaining to the entire investment, the government contributions across the life of it, the employee contributions across the life of it, and so on are needed. So I'd be very interested indeed if the Minister could elucidate that. Thank you, Minister.
Honourable Minister.
Yeah, thank you very much for the member for the question in regards to clause 25. I can assure the member that the time period provided is consistent with the usual period for KiwiSaver changes. The FMA was consulted in the context of this change and confirmed that that was a suitable period, and it is acknowledged in clause 25 that we are looking to provide a limited protection for non-compliance with financial markets legislation, acknowledging that some of these changes relate to changes in product disclosure statements under the Financial Markets Conduct Act 2013, and that they will have until the date noted. It is sufficient time in order to make those changes. In regards to the questions regarding clause 23, new subpart 3B, subparts 101M and 101N, the Inland Revenue has no discretion on changing those. Those statements are consistent with other aspects of legislation. In regards to the questions from Te Pāti Māori, I will not repeat answers that I've already given to questions, and I didn't have any clause numbers to be able to give any specifics.
The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 18, section 4.1 to replace 1 April 2026 with 1 April 2028 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
6 votes in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 19, section 22(1)(c)(1)(a) to delete give or be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
6 votes in favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 20 to insert subclause 5 is out of order as being outside the scope of the bill. The question is that Arana Williams' tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101L be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 votes opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
In favour.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Arana Williams' tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101M be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ona pōti whakaai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Arana Williams' tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101N be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono nā pōti whakaai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Arana Williams' tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101O be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono nā pōti whakaai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 23, new section 101P be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono nā pōti whakaai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101P be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono nā po te whakaai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101Q be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakaai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is Aotearoa Williams tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101R be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Pōti e whakaai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101S be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakaai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Aotearoa Williams tabled amendment to clause 23 to delete new section 101T be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakaai.
The The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 25, new section 244A, to replace 1 November 2025 with 1 October 2025 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 25, new section 244B, to replace 1 January 2026 with 1 December 2025 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Alana Williams' tabled amendment to clause 26, schedule 1, to delete new clause 15B be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes in favour.
ACT New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Part 2 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
15 votes opposed.
ACT New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakahe.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed. Members, we come now to the debate on clauses 1 and 2, title and commencement. The Honourable Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. And I'm speaking to an amendment to clause 2, the commencement, that will be tabled in a couple of minutes. What this, and here it comes, what this amendment does is ask that the commencement of the sections that are to do with the investment boost be delayed for implementation to 1 April 2026. And the reason for this, Mr Speaker, is because the government needs to get a time to understand the fiscal risks of what has been put in place. What has become apparent is this is an uncapped expenditure. It's listed on page 89 of the Budget Economical and Fiscal Update, the BFU. And what it says is the fiscal and economic impacts of investment boost are significant and have been based on some assumptions and judgments which have a degree of uncertainty. The modelled impacts use aggregate macroeconomic data as an input together with assumptions on coverage within the tax base and forecast the growth of investment. Variations of any of these factors can materially affect the fiscal and economic impacts of this policy. And Mr Speaker, I think over the last 24 hours it's just become apparent how broad this category is, that it has been confirmed by the Minister this morning that everything is into it. What was put in the House last night is that if someone wanted to bring in a $1 billion oil and gas rig, they would be eligible for a $200 million tax break without the government taking any equity share in this. In fact, the Minister who is bringing another subsidy for the oil and gas industry was talking yesterday about, with great pride about how this was a return to Muldoon-style co-investment with industry. But, Mr Speaker, what has also become apparent, we've seen what is arguably the country's most senior tax accountant, John Cuthbertson, this morning saying that I think everybody is somewhat surprised of the breadth of this particular tax break that is in that. He's described as being bemused at the inclusion of things like company cars and office buildings, which aren't even eligible for depreciation these days, but that is included within this. And the very uncapped nature of this, and the fact that the government doesn't have a handle on what is going to happen if costs blow out on this. What we're seeing is that businesses are being told that they can start spending from yesterday and that they'll be able to claim this 20%. But what happens, and what the Minister of Finance, the Minister and the Chair, or indeed the government, has not been able to explain to anyone what happens if costs blow out on this. Is everybody who files using this guaranteed that they are going to get it no matter what the cost blowout? What everybody is suspecting is that the government is going to have to do some latter-day patch-up on this and actually put some parameters around this, because as we're saying, it is in the specified fiscal risk section of the BFU. The government needs to actually go and do the work around understanding what the cost to New Zealand is going to be. What is the pressure that it is going to put and the risk that it puts in terms of Crown expenditure? And that's why we're bringing this amendment saying let's defer the implementation of this so that the government can actually go away and do the hard work that is required to get a handle on what the expenditure is going to be. Because there have been many questions put to the government over the last 24 hours. They haven't been able to answer them. And what we do need to understand is what happens if this does blow out. What is going to happen? Is there just going to be cuts elsewhere to pick up the slack on this, or is the government going to come in and put parameters around which mean that people that have rightly gone out and invested thinking that they were eligible for this 20% break will no longer be eligible, and they're going to get a nasty surprise when they go to claim their 20%. So for that reason, we are asking that the government give the thought that should have been put into this before a policy was announced.
Mr. Chair. Dr. Lawrence Zunan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a number of questions for the Minister regarding Clause 2 commencement date, as well as Clause 1 title, but I'm also just noticing that the clock hasn't quite adjusted yet, but I'm going to start anyway. So in terms of the commencement date, I echo what the previous speaker, the Honourable Dr. Megan Wood, has mentioned in terms of the commencement date, and particularly we're looking at Section 2, subsection 2, on the coming into force 22nd of May 2025. Understandably, in this House, we're still on the 22nd, but outside of this House, it's already on the 23rd. So the idea of the fact that we are making a retrospective application of the legislation never really sits well in the context of how we do things in this House. But I want to check with the Minister what is so urgent that that date can't be the day of royal assent, and it has to be yesterday. How many people have applied, or what is the, how many people have basically have applied, or is the investment boost eligible for that we're required to start yesterday and not the day of the royal assent? And I think constitutionally that raises a really interesting issue in terms of the retrospectivity of the commencement date. And I wanted to check if the Minister would consider my amendment, which just to bring in line to say that, you know what, 2 days doesn't really affect things all that much unless it's something that we miss, which we didn't cover in this debate, in which case would the Minister consider my amendment which changes to the day of royal assent? The second question is around Section 2, subsection 4. Coming to force the 1st of February, I guess some of the other dates, you might, limited understanding of the taxation system, I admit, but 1st of July in terms of the way that, in terms of the budget year, and 1st of April in terms of the financial year, that makes sense. But the 1st of April 2026 as a date doesn't seem to make that sense, and does seem to have a level of arbitrarity to it in terms of the rate reduction that is going to be introduced. So I also have amendment paper on this, which I wondered if the Minister would consider. But finally, going on to the title of this bill, and I understand that the title is, Taxation Budget Measures Act, but in fact, budget measures, although is somewhat a loose description of what this bill does, but then it doesn't actually capture some of the specificity as we have discussed throughout this debate around investment boost, around KiwiSaver, around the rate reduction of KiwiSaver, family credits, best start. So I have some amendments on this as well, if the Minister wouldn't mind considering. But I think fundamentally something that we have heard the Minister say over this, and then when we are having this debate under urgency, which means that we didn't hear from the New Zealand public, and indeed, as we see in the regulatory impact statement, we only heard from 3 agencies, and not even all of the agencies, such as MFAT, is the fact that this budget, we simply do not know. This bill, we simply don't know all of the fishhooks around it, but it seems to be something that is primarily going to benefit, yet again, the wealthy of this country, as opposed to people who are working and, the lowest earning New Zealanders in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I wonder if the Minister would consider my amendments to the title, which is replace budget measures with national is rich and they are sorted bill. I think this is a more accurate description based on what the Prime Minister himself has said publicly. So this is just extrapolation of that. Or alternatively, I wonder if the Minister would consider, because the Minister, right at the end of answering my question for the previous part, made it into a thing where he was like, if the Greens really care about 16 and 17-year-olds, they will vote for this bill. But I would challenge that Minister to say that if the government really cares about 16 and 17-year-olds, they will allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. So if they do not allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote, then what we are doing here is we're asking 16 and 17-year-olds of this country to pay for this country without the eligibility to vote under our fundamental constitutional arrangement of Bill of Rights. If that is the case, would the Minister consider my amendment, which is changing budget measures to we want 16 and 17-year-olds to pay for the country, just not to vote?
Taxation without representation.
The Honourable Minister.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I won't be responding to what are not serious suggestions in regards to title, in regards to Clause 1. In regards to the questions regarding commencement date and the recommendation by the senior Labor front bench member, the Honourable Megan Woods, that we should look to delay initiatives that will bring economic growth to this country, the answer is no. We will not delay initiatives that will increase economic growth by a year. There is no cap or limit other than the integrity measures outlined in the context of this bill. There therefore cannot be any cost blowout in the context of this. This will significantly increase economic growth and for the benefit of the member, increase productivity.
And increasing productivity leads to increases in income. And increases in income lead to increases in tax revenue. Productivity is good for an economy. Economic growth is good for an economy. And this government does not at all accept any initiative to delay such benefits which will benefit the good people of New Zealand.
Ingrid Leary.
Chair, and thank you, Minister, for letting us know your theory of change, which does sound quite a lot like trickle-down economics. And I have a suggestion for a new name for the Taxation Budgets Bill number 2. I would not do something frivolous because that is against standing orders, so I wouldn't consider calling it the Taxation Paid For by Women Bill, or I wouldn't suggest the Taxation Corporate Welfare Bill. However, I would like to seriously suggest, Mr Chair, following on from some of the other comments, that we just change it to the Interim Taxation Budget Measures Bill, because we have not seen a cost-benefit analysis on any of the 3 initiatives that have been proposed by this bill. So this is a committee stage. There has been no select committee. One would expect at least a CBAX to be able to test the risk appetite of the government, the questions around blowout, and the very tenuous links, and this has been brought up by the Minister himself in his last contribution, and I note how engaged the government members were, that this is going to help increase productivity and facilitate economic growth. Now, the economic growth that I think he is alluding to is 1% over 20 years, which is hardly ambitious. But in terms of increasing productivity, there is no nexus between the capital investment and the level of productivity that the Minister is claiming is going to lead to the economic growth. Maybe that evidence is there, but we have not seen the cost-benefit analysis. So we do not know whether that is something, his assertion is something that can be validated, what the risks are, and also all those questions that have been raised in previous contributions about the impact, equity impacts on marginalised communities, on women, on Māori and so on. Without that CBAX, and without that analysis having been done, and I'm assuming it hasn't because we have asked repeatedly for that at each stage of this discussion, then it would appear that there are going to be unintended consequences and there is going to be a fix. So I would ask the Minister, please, if we can call it the Interim Taxation Budget Measures Bill, then we could come back, if he could please commit to coming back with a CBAX, maybe today even, so we could finalise it after the analysis has been done and those checks can be done to ensure that there are not going to be changes. Because if I was a betting woman, I would say we will be back here very soon, wasting the House's time trying to make the changes that will flow from the CBAX that we have not seen.
Mr Chair.
The Honourable Minister.
The regulatory impact statement is available for the member, which will support understanding of the matters raised. Disclosures by officials and analysis, including risks, are included within that document, and I've noted that before.
Just before I take the next call, we've had a couple of good general debate type speeches relating to a topic, but we'd now really like to get a little bit more specific, please. The Honourable Deborah Russell.
I really want the Minister to take this point on board. So far he hasn't. We do not know how much this is going to cost. What it means. We have been warned by senior tax accountants, by senior thinkers about our economy that this could blow out. It is listed in the fiscal risks that this particular partial expensing could blow out. So here's the sequence of events. It blows out, seeing as the Minister likes to talk sequences of event. It blows out. It means the fiscal deficit becomes greater. The need to borrow becomes greater. The Minister then has to come back and change the rules retrospectively. What does that then do to investment certainty? What that does do to investment growth? The Minister needs to take this suggestion very, very seriously that we delay the commencement of this bill. We agree, Minister, economic growth is a good thing. Increases in wages are a good thing. Making our country more productive is a good thing. The thing is, there is massive uncertainty around this measure. Any wise investor will be holding their breath for a bit until the government comes back with a little bit more certainty about it. Take the time, Minister. Defer the start date of the partial expensing until 1 April 2026.
Mr Chairman.
Nancy Lowe.
That debate on this question now closed.
Dr. Honourable Megan Woods, heeding.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. And I thank the Minister for his response to my amendment to Clause 2. And he raised some very interesting information, new information, to the House in the course of his contribution in response to my amendment to Clause 2 of this bill. When asked about how the government was going to deal with the cost blowout, which has been in the last 24 hours very clearly signalled as a risk, the Minister said it seemed to be, and the Minister can correct me if I've got the wrong end of the stick, but to paraphrase, it seemed to be that he was saying that there was going to be increased revenue as a response, as a consequence of the changes because of the increases to productivity that partial expensing would bring into play. So therefore he did not see a risk to the commencement date as specified in Clause 2 of the bill being where it is in the text, and the reason why he should not support the amendment for us saying that we'd like a bit more look at it. I just want to reiterate, nobody is arguing that actually having productivity measures for the country is good. What we have questioned through the course of this debate is whether we've looked at all the options. But now what we're really concerned about is the suggestions that we're seeing emerge in the media that the government may have to come back and narrow the parameters of this measure because of the risk that it poses. And this isn't just Labor saying this is a range of commentators that are sharing this concern, that there will be businesses that go out from today and expense things, rightly thinking that they could claim 20%. The Minister is saying there's no need to worry about that, and he's introduced in the debate on this part of the bill because there will be increased revenue. Now, what we've been told in other documentation with this bill is that we can see a 1% growth in GDP over 20 years. So I'd like to know from the Minister, what is the modelled increased revenue per year that is going to come because of the lifts in productivity in this bill, and how is that being shown to mitigate the fiscal risk that has already been clearly signalled in the government's own BFU? So if the Minister must be basing his claims on some modelling and some knowledge, so I think the House needs to hear that.
Scott Willis on title and commencement.
Yeah, and it is a relief because this is the first time I've been able to take a call on this bill, and I have had a number of questions that I have wanted to put to the Minister. I know we're on title and commencement, and I do have a suggestion for the Minister. And in relation to that, one of the questions I wanted to put to the Minister was the investment boost, whether it would apply to installing, for example, at home businesses, solar panels, batteries, EV chargers, whether that would apply. Because what I have seen in the bill so far is that it certainly does apply to things that the Minister believes will boost economic growth, such as oil and gas exploration. And this is something that really relates to the title that I think is most appropriate to this bill, because we are seeing a government that is designing policy that wants to take us to a world where we will not be able to provide for our future. And this is really where the government is heading. My proposal for the Minister, and I hope that the Minister will take this seriously because it is seriously intended, is that we replace, in Clause 1 title, replace budget measures, page 3, line 3, with "We love oil rigs." And that would make the title the Taxation "We Love Oil Rigs" bill.
Great amendment.
Now, I think this is this is an attempt to accurately describe the government's purpose in this bill and this budget
And this government.
to make sure that this is also on record. And I think if we really want to get to the guts of it, Minister, we should say it like it is.
It's true.
We should say it like it is. This is about expanding our fossil fuel dedication. This government has its head in the sand on climate. I'd quite
The
like
opposition
the
might like to
minister
save their voices for a closure motion. I might be able to hear something.
I'd quite like the minister to consider whether we want to have accurate naming, and if not, why not? So if the minister could give me a response, that would be really appreciated. I have another suggestion following the minister's response, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the minister, and I'd like to discuss this further. And perhaps the minister might also like to respond to my question that I didn't get to ask earlier, which was around the investment boost. Does that apply to homeowners who have installed solar panels, batteries and EV chargers? Does it apply? So the minister might want to reply. Thank you.
Nancy Lou.
Debate on this question now closed.
The question is that debate on this question now closed. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakahe.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
In favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono ngā poti e whakahe.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed. Aaron Williams tabled amendment to clause 1 to change taxation to KiwiSaver, and Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to insert close before KiwiSaver are out of order as not being serious amendments. Aaron Williams tabled amendment to clause 1 to change budget to austerity, and Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to the amendment to insert cruel before austerity are out of order as being merely an attempt to criticise the bill. Aaron Williams tabled amendment to clause 1 to insert cutting after budget, and Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to the amendment to insert deeply before cutting are out of order as being merely an attempt to criticise the bill. Aaron Williams tabled amendment to clause 1 to insert blown before budget, and Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to the amendment to insert and bungled before budget are out of order as not being serious amendments. Aaron Williams tabled amendment to clause 1 to replace budget measures with anti-savings plan, and Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to the amendment to replace anti-savings plan with cuts for Kiwis are out of order as not being serious amendments. The question is that Aaron Williams tabled amendment to clause 1 to insert pro-wealth before taxation be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Reuben Davidson's tabled amendment to Aotearoa Williams' amendment to Clause 1 to replace equity optional with equity busting is out of order as not being a serious amendment. The question is that Aotearoa Williams' tabled amendment to Clause 1 to insert equity optional before budget measures be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Party vote is called for. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te Marima Ngapoti Whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to national is rich and they are sorted is out of order as not being a serious amendment. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to investment boost and other matters be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te Marima Ngapoti Whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to family credit abatement and other matters be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te Marima Ngapoti Whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to best start and other matters be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te Marima Ngapoti Whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to KiwiSaver adjustments and other measures be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct the party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te Marima Ngapoti Whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Honourable Julianne Gender's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to taking money from babies to give tax breaks for utes is out of order as being not a serious amendment. Ricardo Menendez March has tabled an amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to manifesting trickle-down economics is out of order as not being a serious amendment. Ricardo Menendez March tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to hoping business savings are passed down as wages is out of order as not being a serious amendment. Te Aotearoa has tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to let them eat cake measures is out of order as not being a serious amendment. Celia Wade Brown's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to let them buy yachts budget measure is out of order as not being a serious amendment. Steve Abel's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to robbing from the poor to give to the rich is out of order as not being a serious amendment. Steve Abel's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to petroleum on the nature bonfires budget is out of order as not being a serious amendment. Scott Willis has tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to We Love Oil Rigs is out of order as not being a serious amendment. The question is that Francisco Hernandez tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to budget measures, income tax amendment, KiwiSaver Act amendment, Tax Administration Act amendment be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. Scott Willis has tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to no upper limit to climate disasters is out of order as not being a serious amendment. Land Fam's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to We Forgot Nature as the foundation of our economy is out of order as not being a serious amendment. Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change budget measures to We Want 16 and 17-year-olds to pay for the country just not to vote is out of order as not being a serious amendment. The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakahe.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand First.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakahe.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to Clause 2.2 to change 22 May 2025 to the Day of Royal Assent be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand First.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā poti e whakai.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Honourable Dr Megan Woods tabled amendment to Clause 2.2 to change 22 May 2025 to 1 April 2026 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 2.4 to change 1 February 2026 to 1 April 2026 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 2.5 to change 1 April 2026 to 1 July 2026 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
9 votes opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that Dr Lawrence Zunan's tabled amendment to clause 2.6 to change 1 April 2028 to 1 July 2028 be agreed to. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. Noes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 opposed.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes in favour.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakaai.
Act New Zealand.
11 opposed.
New Zealand first.
8 votes opposed.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakae.
The ayes are 55, the noes are 68. The question is not agreed. The question is that clause 2 stand part. All those in favour say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. No. The ayes have it. Please conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
49 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
34 votes opposed.
Green Party of Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Te kaumarima ngā poti whakahe.
Act New Zealand.
11 in favour.
New Zealand first.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
Ono ngā pōti e whakahe.
The ayes are 68, the noes are 55. The question is agreed. I'll report this bill without amendment.
Thank you, sir.
The House is resumed.
Mr Speaker, the committee has considered the Taxation Budget Measures Bill number 2 and reports it without amendment. I move the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. This bill is set down for third reading immediately.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Simon Watts.
I move that the Taxation Budget Measures Bill number 2 be now read a third time. Mr Speaker, I would like to thank the House again for considering this bill as urgent and for the contributions from members that have brought us to this stage. This government fully recognises the immense pressure many hard-working Kiwis are under due to the rising cost of living. This is a real
urgent issue confronting households every day. That is why this government is moving at pace to grow the economy so that we can ease the burden on households, drive down the cost of living, and give every Kiwi a fair shot at getting ahead. By growing the economy, we accelerate the recovery and deliver real support to New Zealand households and businesses. This bill is designed to support households and businesses by implementing measures to boost investment, increase productivity, raise wages, and encourage savings. These are all the things that will put New Zealand on an accelerated pathway to recover and have a stronger economy. I want to take a moment now to reflect on what we've heard from people and the communities that these changes are designed to support. One voice that particularly stands out is that of Izzy Mullen-Winiata. Izzy is a bright, passionate 17-year-old who has advocated for ensuring that under 18-year-olds have the same KiwiSaver rights as everyone else. She brought a petition to Parliament last September. I want to share her words directly with you because we deserve that they are heard. Quote, "I am petitioning because as an under 18-year-old worker, I find it unjust that I must miss out on KiwiSaver contributions while doing the same work as those over the age of 18. Quote, I believe this change is essential for young people, young workers, as buying a first home in New Zealand is incredibly challenging. And this change would ensure equal access to retirement savings and support first home buyers. Quote, in my opinion, allowing us to start saving earlier is vital to both buying a first home and ensuring retirement savings. Mr. Speaker and honourable members, Izzy is exactly right. I am very proud to be part of a government that is supporting a bill because it provides equal opportunities to our young people to start saving sooner. It will mean young people like Izzy and their KiwiSaver accounts will be able to grow, and it would allow them to buy their first house or enjoy their retirement income more comfortably. The positive feedback for measures in this bill, particularly regarding KiwiSaver, has been overwhelming. Brendan Ward, Executive Heads of Distribution for New Zealand Funds, says, quote, including 16 and 17-year-olds is a fantastic step, a great initiative to get young people into their investment journey. He also said, quote, lifting the default contribution rate to 4% is smart. Kiwis aren't saving enough. Robin Walker, tax partner at Deloitte New Zealand, says, and I quote, it's good to see some active thought given to improving retirement savings. When small changes are compounded over a working life, they can make a material change to what is available at retirement. Mr. Speaker, the feedback does speak for itself. No one gets to retirement wishing they had saved less. We all need to save more, and these changes will make a significant difference when people retire, allowing them to go off and enjoy their retirement how they want. I also want to touch on investment boost. New Zealand needs to get the wheels of economic growth turning. This government wants businesses to invest in their businesses and in new assets, to hire more workers, to pay higher wages and get more money flowing through the system. That is why this government is making easier for businesses to invest through Investment Boost. This tax incentive will allow businesses to immediately deduct 20% of the cost of new capital assets. This, Mr. Speaker, is all about growth. With 600,000 businesses in New Zealand, Investment Boost will allow them to have a better access to tools that they need to increase productivity. Dylan Bentley, Relationship Associate at ANZ Bank, said, quote, Investment Boost is a helpful change for Kiwis. For businesses looking to expand and boost productivity, this is a clear signal that now's the time to invest. And Ifran Nabi, a tax advisor, said, I think this policy is a winner. The last time New Zealand businesses had such a big win in respect of a tax announcement would have been 15 years ago. Mr. Speaker, Investment Boost is a win for Kiwi businesses and it is a win for Kiwi workers. It's going to have significant benefits, higher wages, more job opportunities, and we are very, very proud of a government that is bringing in this tangible change for hard-working Kiwis across this country. Mr. Speaker, I am humbled to be the Minister of Revenue of this government. I want to acknowledge my Inland Revenue officials, our Treasury officials, for the significant amount of work that they have put in preparation and supporting this bill and the broader budget. I acknowledge my teams and the broader teams of the Minister of Finance for that work and the context in which they have played. Mr. Speaker, together these measures and this budget sets a clear course for New Zealand's economic recovery and sustained growth. With economic growth comes higher wages, more job opportunities, higher living standards, and more thriving businesses and thriving Kiwi households. That is why, Mr. Speaker, I am proud to commend the bill to the House, and I look forward to its positive impact in our beautiful nation.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. The Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell.
Mr. Speaker, this is, in the final analysis, a disappointing bill. There are some aspects of this bill that, of course, we agree with. There are, of course, some good things in this bill. But overall, it is disappointing and it is worrying. So let's start with the stuff that I think one of the things that is a real positive in that bill. And as the Minister said, extending the KiwiSaver tax credit to KiwiSaver to 16 and 17-year-olds is a very good move. We do know that getting people in earlier, enabling them to start their savings earlier, has a long-term benefit for them. And I think the Minister quoted Robin Walker, a tax partner at Deloitte, who said that small changes are compounded over a working life and they make a big difference in the long run. So yes, it is a wonderful idea to get 16 and 17-year-olds enrolled and contributing in KiwiSaver. But if small changes compound over a working life, what about big changes? What about $250 less every year in the KiwiSaver tax credit? What about the government cutting the KiwiSaver tax credit in half? That small change compounded over a working life, well, that's going to work out to $66,000 less for someone over a lifetime, for someone who's aged 20. That's the effect of compounding. And this is why this is a disappointing bill. A good measure on one hand, 16 and 17-year-olds into KiwiSaver, but then taking away even more with the other hand. That is a very disappointing move. And then there were the changes to working for families. So again, some changes there. Now here is a good change, lifting the abatement threshold up to 47,000, I think was the change that went through. That is a good thing. It means that people get to keep more of what they receive in working for families before it gets abated away. A good move. But at the same time, the abatement rate was lifted. So that money gets taken away faster. It was described as being fiscally neutral. Could be. But here's the other change that went through, and it is quite a significant change in that regard. This government has stepped away from universality for children. You know, people still talk about the old family benefit and what a difference it made to families. And one of the reasons that it made a real difference, it was simple, it was straightforward, it was universal. And we had started to work back towards that concept of universality, which we have in place for our senior citizens. And we were starting to get it in place again for our children with the Best Start payment. And every family, no matter what, received Best Start for the first year of a child's life. It was a universal payment, and it spoke to the importance of children, the importance of ensuring that children get a good start. A government that actually cared about children would be looking to increase the length of time for which Best Start could be received, no questions asked. Right. Instead, this government has chosen to turn it around. And sitting in their own regulatory impact statement, it turns out that with this government's changes to working for families, 61,000 families are worse off. That's one of the changes in this tax bill. 61,000 families who are worse off. And then there's the government's partial expensing of asset purchases. It's a really interesting move. And of course, on this side of the House, we do agree with trying to do something to enhance business productivity. We do agree with trying to do something around capital intensity. What that means, ensuring that firms have a stronger asset base so that then each worker is more productive. These are good things to do. But is this the right way to do it? And we found out through questioning of the minister during the committee stage of the bill that they had not considered alternative measures. They'd considered maybe decreasing the company tax rate, but they hadn't considered specific measures around increasing capital intensity, around ensuring that we have a better capital base. The only one they considered was partial expensing. Where was the work on increasing the low value asset write-off threshold? That would have helped firms, and in particular it would have helped smaller firms. Where was the work around accelerated depreciation? Not just having this partial expense in the first year, write-off in the first year, but an overall increase in depreciation rates. That too would have given a boost to firms. Now, a responsible government would have done the analysis comparing these alternative measures, not just between the company tax rate and partial expensing, but between partial expensing, increasing the low value asset write-off threshold and accelerated depreciation rate. Those matters should have been considered as well. But the real problem here is that this government has not adequately considered the risks of a blowout. That's right. We have leading thinkers in this country, leading tax people saying, there is one hell of a risk here. So John Cuthbertson has said, John Cuthbertson, who heads up the tax division within the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, is worried that there is no cap on the value of the investments that can get this tax break. That could lead to a blowout. And sitting in the Budget, Economic and Fiscal Update, there is an acknowledgement that this is indeed a substantial risk. Let me read it again. It needs to be in the Hansard. So sitting on page 89 of the Budget Economic and Fiscal Update, under revenue is a specific fiscal risk, and we don't even know how big it is because it depends on uncertainty. The projections are uncertain. So it says, the fiscal and economic impacts of investment boost are significant and have been based on some assumptions and judgments which have a degree of uncertainty. The modelled impacts use aggregate macroeconomic data as an input together with assumptions on coverage within the tax base and forecasts of growth and investment. Variations in any of these factors can materially affect the fiscal and economic impacts of the policy. It's all very, very uncertain. There is a substantial fiscal risk, and we just don't know. So, a good move to try to increase productivity. But is this move the best move that could be made? We don't know because the alternative analysis wasn't done. And what about all the risks associated with it? And then we were told that it would have a long-term benefit on wages as well. But again, sitting in the government's own regulatory impact statement, paragraph 75, international evidence provides mixed results on how the specific benefits of investment-targeted tax measures are shared between workers and capital owners. This makes it difficult to better assess the distributional impacts. They say it will flow to wages, but the reality is the evidence shows that workers never get the benefit of these changes, that the benefit of changes in the last 20 or 30 years has overwhelmingly flowed to capital, and workers' wages have remained largely static. It is heroic to claim that this will flow through to workers. What we do know will flow through to workers is the changes in pay equity that have made this investment boost possible. This investment boost, this partial expensing, is being paid for on the backs of the women who hold this country together. That is absolutely shameful. It should never have happened. This is a very dubious bill, Mr. Speaker, and we simply cannot support it.
Well, good speech.
Dr. Lawrence Zunan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, we consider this budget to be a bit of a lolly scramble, but let us be clear. This bill is not only just a lolly scramble, but for the workers and wage earners of Aotearoa, there aren't even any lollies in there, just sadness and despair. That's what we are seeing with this bill, and that's what I've seen throughout the committee stages. But, Mr. Speaker, let's unpack of what exactly happened during the committee stage, because again, we are pushing this bill through under urgency. There is no select committee stage. We don't hear from the people of Aotearoa. Indeed, in the regulatory impact statement, only 3 departments were consulted: the Treasury, the MB, and also IRD. And that is significant later. Let's start with the first part of what this bill set out to do in terms of the investment boost. The first issue that we have with investment boost is the fact that it blatantly allows subsidies for the oil and gas industry, which is fundamentally against our international obligations and also some of our free trade agreements, particularly with EU and UK. This is significant risk to Aotearoa in terms of our trade potential because of the fact that NFAT wasn't even consulted according to the regulatory impact statement. That is a risk, Mr. Speaker. But as the previous speaker has already mentioned, we also simply do not know the magnitude, and indeed in the impact statement it states, and I quote, "There is a significant uncertainty about the magnitude of the effect and how the benefits will be distributed across the economy." And I think the second part of this, how this will be distributed across the economy, is the crux of the issue that the Green Party has with the investment boost. Because like we have seen leading up to this budget, that the government will do anything other than reset the tax and be transformative in the way that we look at tax in Aotearoa, but instead will take money from the lowest paid workers, from our women workers, and all of those by cancelling 33 pay equity claims. We are seeing the government is willing to take money from our young people. We're seeing the government is willing to take money from our young parents and from our children. This is what is pushing for this investment boost. But when we are looking at the investment boost, there was also none of that other clarity around it, which the previous speaker, the Honourable Dr. Deborah Russell, has mentioned in terms of the potential blowout. All of these are a concern, and that's just one part of the issue with this bill. Let's talk about family credits and Best Start. What we're seeing with the family credit, yes, there is an increase in terms of the abatement rate from 42,000 roughly to 44,900 a year. But in terms of when we are looking at the gradual reduction in terms of the 27 cents in the dollar for working for families, we're seeing that being increased to 27 cents 50 in the dollar, which means for every dollar earned over the threshold of 44,900, payment is reduced by 27.5 cents, which is an increase, which means that working people and young parents who are struggling, who are doing multiple jobs, will see even less money in their back pocket. That is what we're seeing when we're looking at the family credit, because it is adjusted possibly to the level of CPI, but it's not adjusted to the point that what our communities and what the people of Aotearoa actually need. And let's talk about Best Start. We saw in the latest report in the regulatory impact statement, 61,000 families will be worse off with this bill. Not individuals, 61,000 families will be worse off with this. For a government that likes to talk the talk about how much they care for the people of Aotearoa, how do they justify this? There is no justification for this, Mr. Speaker. Lastly, when we're looking at KiwiSaver, this is also incredibly problematic because, yes, increasing the threshold over time from the contribution from 3% to 4% on the surface might seem like a good thing. Expanding it to 16 and 17 euros is a good thing and it's a good move. However, as we have also tried to ask the minister, and we have got no response, is how would this affect the poorest families and also students and also people who are just already trying to support their families? How would this work with this government's own educational outcome achievement targets and attendance? It doesn't match up and it doesn't line up, Mr. Speaker. But when we're looking at KiwiSaver, yes, we can talk about the fact that, yes, the government is able to introduce, increase that employers can increase to 4% and the employees increase to 4%. For those people who are on minimum wage, they're already struggling as it is. And for them to match that, they have to also increase their contribution to 4%. Not only that, we are also still seeing employers who take their company or take the employer contribution out from the remuneration of their employee, which means that for some employee, particularly those in really vulnerable employment situations such as retail and hospitality, we're seeing that rather than contributing 6%, they're now looking at contributing to 8% without any signal from this government that their salary will be significantly increased. That itself is an issue. Second issue with the KiwiSaver that has been introduced under this bill, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that the government paints this beautiful picture about the fact that, yes, people will be saved more, but they themselves have chickened out on contributing more for New Zealanders. They themselves have halved their government contribution from $520 to over $500 to $250. That is cowardice. If you really care about the people of Aotearoa, you would have highlighted that. If you're going to take money from the New Zealanders, you might as well come out and say it proudly. Don't hide behind all of this other smokescreen that is being created, trying to say that what you're doing is a good thing. In fact, it is not for the people of Aotearoa. But final issue, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the KiwiSaver readjustment that we see here, is the fact that the government has once again created more blue tapes for people to try and get rate reduction if they want to decrease, if they say we can't simply afford to pay 4%. Well, here's an option for you to remain 3%, but you have to do it every single year, and you have to keep on reapplying it. And as we have seen, Mr. Speaker, with the shambles that was family boost introduced by this government last year, $14 million was done through admin. We haven't even got out of this minister on how much this Kiwi boost and this rate reduction application is going to cost IRD. That wasn't even something we were able to get out of the minister during the committee stage. But what we do know is more and more people may potentially opt out of KiwiSaver because it simply is too hard for them to try and apply for a rate reduction on a year-to-year basis. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that does not care for New Zealanders. This is a government that doesn't care about young people. Again, if you really care about the 60 and 70-year-old, if you really think that they're going to be working, they're going to be contributing to KiwiSaver, let them vote. Let them vote. But instead, what we're seeing is once again cosmetic changes and smokescreen has been created. In our green budget that we have announced, we see that we want to see a variation, a transformative change to the way we look at tax. Investment boost that the government said and the minister said is based on US and Canada. Guess what? They have a capital gains tax. Canada has a form of windfall tax. We do not even have that. There is no barrier to investment, and there is no risky investment in Aotearoa. And under our budget, we'll see a transformative tax system that benefits the people of Aotearoa. We'll see that benefiting hundreds and thousands more families because we will increase that abatement rate and we'll increase what people get. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Todd Stevenson.
Mr. Speaker, look, it's a pleasure to stand on behalf of ACT and talk on the Taxation Budget Measures Bill. The first bill in what was a very responsible, sensible and future-looking budget that was delivered yesterday. And ACT is very proud to be standing on this side of the House with our government partners and actually putting in place a budget not just for today but for the future. And this bill is a very important part of that. What we have clearly signalled to New Zealanders in this budget is, yes, we understand there are still cost of living pressures. We understand that we need to invest in the services that they expect, the public services they expect, but we also need to put in place the foundations for a growing economy to deliver higher paying jobs and wages and also get our education settings right. And of course, in this bill, we see the investment boost, which is an amazing policy to actually get our productive sector, allow them to invest in capital, make sure we're actually building the jobs and getting the technology to address things like our productivity deficit under control. So that's great. There's obviously some important changes in KiwiSaver, which I think across the House, everyone universally accepts that New Zealanders need to be saving for their future, and some important changes been made, and there including some very important working for families changes. What I've taken out of the very positive budget that this side of the House and this government has delivered is exactly that. It's a positive government, a positive budget by a positive government, which actually is looking to grow New Zealand, ensure we have the right skills, we have actually a productive sector and deliver for businesses and families and farms, and actually make sure our children have the skills and education for the future. And it's very clear to see when you look in the budget where we're investing the money that things like this bill are delivering and ensuring we get in place. That's in health, that is in the investment boost, that is in defence, and that is in education. So this budget is a budget for today, but it's also a budget for their future, and I commend it to the House.
Jamie Arbuckle.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise on behalf of New Zealand First in this third reading of the Taxation Budget Measures Bill number 2. And I think it's oozing from that side of the House. I think they like this policy. I think they like investment boost. I started to hear them warming up to it during the Committee of the Whole. And also the KiwiSaver changes. I think deep down they wish that they had come up with those ideas, what this government has come up with in this budget. I want to say, firstly, congratulations to our Finance Minister, our Minister of Revenue, who have put this together, the associate ministers that have worked on this. Investment boost, starting today, Mr Speaker, investing into capital, 600,000 businesses, 50,000 farm holdings across this country. They can get out and start investing into capital, into productive assets that will employ people, that will change the dial, that will put our economy back on track. This is a flagship policy. This is something we will come back into this House 2025. What did this government deliver? They delivered investment boost. It is, as I said yesterday, a game changer. This side of the House thought of it, that side of the House is going, oh no, they've come up with something, a game changer for business, a game changer for our economy, and what a game changer in KiwiSaver for our young people, 16 and 17-year-olds, those contributions from the government, their employer, they're going to be able to get their first home sooner, they're going to save more. We've come up with it. Support us. You should be on board with this. I commend it to the House.
I te pika.
Takutai Tashkent.
O tēnā koe I te pika, tēnā tātou I te whare. I rise on behalf of Te Pāti Māori to share and show our fierce opposition to this bill, the Taxation Budget Measure number 2 bill. I te pika. This is a budget that attacks the poor. It attacks Māori, attacks beneficiaries, attacks parents. It's the no BS budget, the no fudget budget, the yeah nah budget, the budget that is built on the suffering and misery of our people. E te iwi, we represent 1 million people of this population. We are 20% of this population. And yes, we are. And we are 20%. The total budget, $188 billion. And this government only sees Māori to be represented at 0.27% of its annual budget. Wow. That's all we're worth to this country, yet this country was built on our people. Let's talk KiwiSaver. KiwiSaver, the scheme for our kaumātua and kuia. They've worked hard. They have been part of a scheme that is there to be available for them to access at age 25. You know, they've worked hard so that they can... Age 65, 65, I correct myself. Oh, we're good at maths. We're good at mathing. Age 65. But our people don't live that long. We don't even get to access our KiwiSaver. Yet this government shared yesterday that they're going to halve their contribution because they're saving on the backs of our people. We will no longer get the contribution of $500. It's been halved. We're now going to get 25% of that. It's now gone down to $260. $260. What is that worth? KiwiSaver was meant to be there for our retirement. We were meant to be, it's meant to be there so that we can have access to the future of our mokopuna. But we will no longer live to access the KiwiSaver. That's why it's a year nā budget. It's iwi, we've got a cost of living crisis. I don't hear anything from this government to help us improve the cost of living. I'm here. We are not hearing anything that is going to improve the cost of living. Our people are starving. They're lining up to the food banks. There's no increase for food banks. 2.8 million people are living under the minimum wage. That's 59% this population. 3.2 million are living under the living wage. That's 68% of this country. The cost of living pressures are hard. They're stressing our people out. Our whānau are struggling out on the streets. It's increasing mental health issues. It's increasing health issues, but we see no increase in pūtea for Māori health in this country. Again, another part of this year nā budget. They say parents are going to get an increase of $14 a fortnight. That's $7 a week. That doesn't even buy you a pound of butter. That doesn't help with the bread and butter issues that our people are facing. It's $11 for butter. It's $12 apparently in Te Kao. We got an increase in homelessness. There's 113,000 people homeless in this country. There are 246,000 vacant houses. We need to invest. Te Pāti Māori want to introduce a vacant house policy. We're going to make sure that our whānau are housed. It's iwi. This is a year nā budget. We are getting nothing from this budget of 2025.
Francisco Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to take a call on this bill. And yes, here we go. Indeed, Mr. Seymour. There's been a lot of rhetoric on this government about how they're the better economic managers, about how they're going to create productivity, how they're going to create economic growth, and how they're going to attract capital to New Zealand. But what's actually been the net result of their 18 months of misgovernance? 0.5% of minus 0.5% rate of annual growth, Mr. Speaker. They keep attacking us on the government benches for degrowth, but they're the ones that have actually practiced degrowth, Mr. Speaker. And this government continues to perpetuate that outdated economic thinking, which has led to New Zealand's worst economic growth in recent memory. And what is that outdated economic thinking, Mr. Speaker? It's that outdated economic thinking which this budget measures bill confirms. And what is that? It's that outdated thinking which views extractive institutions as the primary way to generate economic growth. That was thoroughly debunked by the Nobel Prize winner last year, by Accommodation. Forgive my pronunciation of his surname. And his central thesis was that extractive institutions like this government is seeking to perpetuate by their handouts to landlords, by their handouts to fossil fuel companies, by their handouts to the sort of institutions that have actually led to New Zealand to the state it is now, versus the economic institutions that actually generate real growth. Now let's go through how this bill actually doesn't do what they're saying it is. And it's really telling. It's really telling in the example in this legislation that they referred to Thomas who bought a yacht. How relatable to so many New Zealanders who are out there buying yachts. Now Thomas with a yacht, he's bought a yacht for $100,000. I don't even know. I think yachts are more expensive than that, Mr. Speaker. But that thinking actually, and their example of Thomas shows who they're actually governing for. They're governing in the interests of these extractive institutions. They're governing in the interests of overseas buyers who they're selling our conservation land to. They're not governing for the needs and interests of everyday New Zealanders. And that's why they've gone silent, Mr. Speaker. They've stopped heckling because they know I have them down to rights. They know that they can't defend what they're doing. We know that this bill leaves, and their policies leave 61,000 families worse off. We know that in the regulatory impact statement, it states that the changes to KiwiSaver will, and the options that were considered, will decrease disposable income, reduce profitability, and may lead to, I actually can't read my handwriting, but it leads to bad things. So we need to elaborate on, I just want to reflect the echoes of what has already been said before. This government is actually fundamentally serious. The halving of the contribution rate actually shows that they're prioritizing, they have this idea that they want to increase savings for people, but in reality, the reducing of the government contribution rate will disincentivize people from saving, and that's what the regulatory impact says. And it's more likely to reduce the saving rate. Well, it's more likely to reduce the saving rates of the people that actually can't afford the higher contribution rate. And look, we've heard that they can just opt out of that. But as we've heard from the contribution of my colleague, Dr. Lawrence Zunan, they've put in a sea of blue, black, and yellow tape to actually stop people from being able to automatically opt into the higher rate. They've put in a lot of barriers for people. And that fundamentally shows, and we've seen this in the budget, bill, who they're governing in the interest of. Now, you've heard my colleague, Dr. Lawrence Zunan, and you've heard from my colleague, Chloe Swarbrick, yesterday, talk about what the alternative vision is. And instead of having bills like this, and instead of having an economy that prioritizes the extractive institutions, instead of having an economy that prioritizes overseas investors and landlords and tobacco companies, we could have a company that invests in people and planet through the green budget. Kia ora.
Cameron Brewer.
Mr. Speaker, how disappointing it is that this opposition is voting against these fantastic KiwiSaver measures, and they go on about losing the government contribution, but that government contribution that is being reduced by $5 a week. It is being reduced by $5 a week, and that is being swamped by the fact that we are lifting the default rate from 3% to 4%, and for the average person, at the end of their working life at retirement, their nest egg will be more than 20% larger. For a working parent on the average income, their nest egg, when they get to 65, will go from $397,000 to over $500,000. They will be over $100,000 better off, and you're arguing about $5 a week. That's how ridiculous it is. Mr. Speaker, the KiwiSaver changes, the lift of the, I'm losing my pace here. Our changes to KiwiSaver will lift the value of the nest eggs by over $3.3 million, $3 million Kiwis. Labor brought in KiwiSaver, and they are now voting against this. Green Party voted for the 2006 legislation, and they are now voting against this. They are voting against 16 and 17-year-olds being able to join the scheme. It's an absolute disgrace. I commend the bill.
Nice work. Very good. Members, the time has come for me to leave the chair for the lunch break. The House will resume at 2 p.m.